1. Hey everybody, it's your friend Adam. I'm here with Ausyarr, Rebel Waste, Autocosm, and Stephen Michael Davis. Let us know about the audio in the chat. We may have some audio issues. I'm not exactly sure. I'm hearing a lot of noise in my ear that seems to come and go. So, but one of you guys check to make sure that the stream looks good. And we're talking about the Hugo and Jake's first video where they talk about Jordan Peterson's book. They're doing a series of videos on Jordan Peterson's book. Do you guys have any overview you want to throw out there?
Who's read the book?
I've read the first chapter.
I read 12 Rules for Life, and I'm reading Maps of Meaning right now.
Okay. Oh, I made it through like 2 chapters, but I moved on to other things, which is typically how I read books. I generally come back to them later.
It wasn't easy. Like I got bored at times and didn't finish it as quickly as I could have, but it was interesting nonetheless. It's a good introduction, I think, to Maps of Meanings if someone wants to go on to that book.
Right. I feel like I was pretty familiar with his Maps of Meaning work, but I haven't read 12 Rules.
So I don't feel like I need rules.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to look at it, well, they got a bunch of dislikes on this, and they obviously got some backlash. They did a second video after this where they kind of tried to dial it back, and I feel like they went super strong in this video. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to look at it. I feel like there's a lot of miscommunication going around with Jordan Peterson. And I mean, these guys, I don't know much about these guys. I've never watched their content. You guys probably know more about them than me. But they're avid atheists, right? They're looking at Jordan Peterson like he's a Christian. We have to take him down. Am I wrong there?
I think so. That's from what I've watched of. Well, I watched a different video than this one, but that's what seemed to be their main point. And the other one is the religious connotations in 12 Rules for Life.
Well, they've got 2 series where they basically make fun of Bible stories. So.
Mm-hmm. So you're telling me somebody went after Jordan Peterson and got backlash? Because that never happens.
They also brought that up, how you can't, what was it? It's something I hear a lot when people criticize Jordan Peterson is they immediately say any rebuttal to our criticism is cultish.
What I've seen so far of this video has not been very substantive anyway, so I don't think you could say that it's unfair to rebut.
So let's go around the circle and give our take on Jordan Peterson. I'll start, and I don't see him as a religious person. I see most of the stuff that he's talking about from a standard atheist, materialist, rationalist perspective. Even when he's talking about the myth stuff, I think he's super careful to say that, I believe in the concept of God. But he's not saying he believes in God. I've never heard him really come out forcefully and say, I believe in God. I think the reason for that is because he's a clinical psychologist. He's been a clinical psychologist his whole life. 90% of the people he sees, he probably uses religion as a way to help them deal with their problems. It's probably a very useful tool for him as a clinician. So you don't want to come out as the most famous clinical psychologist right now and just completely, shit on your entire career. All these people that you've talked intimately about religion with. So that's my take. You want to go next, Otto?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I watched his Bible series very closely because I was looking for that too. Is he a theist? Is he a Christian? Or is he just speaking archetypally? And, I watched it very closely. I watched some of those episodes multiple times, and I got the same impression.
You want to go, Ausyarr? Yeah. Are you done, Otto?
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson, he speaks in like vague terms and doesn't have a doesn't land in one point. So I think a lot of people just don't like him because they're thinking, is he one of us or is he one of the enemy? 'Cause do you believe in God or you don't believe? Because us anti-theists really interested in that, and then the religious people are like, well, he's probably just one of those secret lefties. And I think that's what's happening here. A lot of people just don't like him because they're not sure.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I thought that atheists were comfortable with ambiguity, but I guess they're proving themselves very wrong here. Steve, you want to chime in?
As far as what Jordan Peterson stands for, I think it's a mixed bag. Some of the stuff he says is eminently sensible, and he's obviously very eloquent in how he argues for it. Some of the stuff I think he is just hand waving. Overall, I can't stand the guy for some of it's really like superficial, stupid reasons that have more to do with me than anything. Like,
did it have to do with a babysitter and a Kermit the Frog puppet?
Oh God! Like, I hate anyone I can't avoid, even if I try. Like, I was listening to an NFL podcast, National Football League podcast, and he came up.
Carroll comes.
No way.
Pete Carroll brought him in to talk to the Seahawks, and they were talking about that. And I'm like, God damn it! Even in fucking football, I can't avoid stupid ass Jordan Peterson. Anything that like people who I don't like are really into. That turns me off for some reason, like Dave Rubin. I fucking hate Dave Rubin.
Oh my God. You didn't used to hate Dave Rubin. What happened?
Oh, that's a long story. Talk about somebody who's like obsequious and engages in vague language. But anyways, like the fact that he has so many Kool-Aid drinkers bothers me. And nobody's a bigger Kool-Aid drinker of Jordan Peterson than Jordan Peterson. So but I think we're here to focus on what he's talking about, not the cultural phenomenon around him, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll try to put my personal bullshit aside.
But I think that personal one of the points that I wanted to make is that I think that personal bullshit totally taints Hugo and Jake. Like, I think they went into this thinking, I hate this guy. I think a lot of the people that hate Jordan Peterson go in with the idea that they hate him, and then it poisons the well. They don't listen to what he says. They don't give him any kind of principle of charity. I think he has very interesting things to say that they're completely dismissing for no good reason.
And he's new to the general public at large for the most part. I mean, I think many of us here have been following him for a while, but lately he's been a bit more.
Yeah, he's new to a lot of people. Rebel, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think the most consequential thing, at least in my opinion, that he's talking about goes back to the first podcast he did with Sam Harris, where he argued for Darwinian pragmatism against the materialist factual truth. And
right.
I really like it. It's kind of where my thinking was going originally, so I have to be careful because that's basically cognitive bias right there. But I think it's unavoidable because we look at the world and see facts, but only facts as they are useful to our goals. Someone that looks at just facts and has no goals really has no purpose.
Totally. Yeah. No, you get it. I don't think most people do. So just to really dumb it down, I was completely on the opposite side when that first Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson podcast took place, and I've since gone back and looked at it, and I got to admit Jordan Peterson comes off as kind of a genius in that podcast. All he's doing is he's making an argument that facts should be nested inside of wisdom, and right now our society is the other way around. Wisdom is nested inside of facts, and he's saying that there's a problem there because facts can't give you wisdom. And Sam Harris is coming out and he's trying to make the argument that facts can give you wisdom, and Jordan Peterson is like, that's wrong.
My own thinking on it is that you can't have one isolated from the other, because let's say humans want to fly. That's a goal, but they can't achieve that goal without the facts of science.
Correct.
But the facts of science aren't going to give men the desire to fly.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So let's dive in. Let's take a look at this. If anyone wants to say anything, just speak up and I'll pause the video. Oh no.
Can't hear it. Yeah.
Let me try again here. Okay. You can hear it now, right?
Yeah.
I'm defending freedom of speech because that's how people with different opinions settle their opinions in a civil society.
The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis.
That's so brilliant. Yeah, I don't like Nazis. Yeah, I don't like Nazis either.
It's a pretty bold statement.
Neither does Indiana Jones. Okay, we're all in this together.
Speaking out the way I'm speaking out because I think this is a route to no violence, and violence is lurking. And you can say that that sounds like a threat.
There was no violence at our protest, though.
I just asked, would you refer to me if it wasn't for this law? And I asked you to refer to me with they them pronouns. Would you? And your answer was no.
Not if
I'm going to refer to you as Jane's addiction. I can't help myself. It's the only pronoun I'm going to call you by.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is Hugo and Jake, and today we're beginning a journey that we hope you will all join us on, and that is a journey of Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. This is a self-help book written by Canadian psychologist, philosopher,
University of Toronto, if you're from Toronto.
Did they go over the book in this one too?
This is the very beginning of the video. This is the first video that they made. So that's why.
Did they reference the book?
I hadn't got to the part where they began discussing the book. I started watching it several minutes in, and it's mostly front matter on Jordan himself.
Right there.
Yeah, this is an introduction to the series. Their third video on this is they actually go into the introduction of the book.
Okay.
Which I will be busily watching after this live stream. But no, so I sense a bit of like sanctimonious setup here. Like they're highly advertising that they don't like this guy, right? They're doing everything they can to put this guy down.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't watch them too much, but I think this is just kind of their presentation.
Okay. So they never critique, because they bring up Matt Dillahunty in this and they're like ready to suck his dick. Like, like, what do you mean? There's
a part of it where they don't like the giving rules to other people. And that ties in with the whole Christianity thing. They don't want people to be given rules. They want people to make up their own rules.
Right. Well, we all know lefties are really down on authority. Like they see authority as oppression. So I think these guys definitely fit into that model.
No. Professor Jordan B. Peterson, JBP, the Jeep for short. Yeah, so we are...
Look at that. He's so pissed that he even has to talk about it. It's like he's triggered. He's triggered as hell.
There's a lot of knowing smiles in this video.
So this guy is Jake or Hugo? Which one's Hugo? That one's Hugo?
I don't know.
Jake is on the left. Hugo is on the right. From our perspective.
Which one's that one?
Jake is the fat one. That's Hugo you're pointing at.
Okay.
Hang on. What? They're both.
No. I mean, Hugo's chunky, but he used to be way bigger. Jake is a fat ass. I got in a Twitter argument once with Jake about guns, and he was extremely disingenuous. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Okay. Well, this guy, Jake, I think that's Jake. Hugo's the smug one. Jake takes it back quite a bit. Hugo's the one that is swinging for the fences, and there's actually several moments in here where Jake is like, "Whoa, dude! Like we're gonna get killed here. Stop it."
Doing this. If you are a fan of Jordan, you probably might not like this because I think he's wrong about a lot of things.
So I think I actually want to say for the record that I think Jordan is wrong about a lot of things too. I think throwing out the things that he's right about because he's wrong about a few things is just a terrible argument strategy.
But at the very least, we hope if you also are open to ideas, as you should be, like we saw in the clip of Jordan earlier saying that free speech is how people settle ideas,
Well,
then at the very least, hear what we have to say.
then I guess this is the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
And we're on credit.
So, today what we're going to be doing, we're not actually going to be looking at the book itself. Next time we're going to start with that. Today we're going to be doing sort of an overview of...
An overture, if you will.
Of how Jordan Peterson sort of became famous. And initially, his big break, as it were, ended up being over this Canadian bill, C-16, which involved their sort of anti-discrimination law.
Yeah, it's if you're an American, it's kind of the protected classes.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent governmentally. And so the clip you saw was Peterson getting surprisingly vocal compared to how he acts nowadays. He's usually very, I'm going to say measured. He's usually very
calculated.
Hey, anyone want to read my super chat for me? Rebel.
I've actually reviewed all of his Dr. Peterson's work, AMA. If you just want to get a bunch of people who have skimmed 12 rules, then lol, okay.
That was great. Hey, I think the hiss might be you, Rebel. Are you muting? What happens when you mute your microphone?
I tried that earlier and nothing was happening.
Now come back. Yeah.
Oh, it is me.
Oh, yeah.
It cuts it down quite a bit, so just mute when you're not talking.
All right.
calculated. About this bill, because he misinterprets
Actually, we should all be muting when we're not talking, so.
it. And I guess we just kind of picked this thing they did with CBC because I think it gives the best little overview. So we'll be taking clips from that and responding and stuff.
Yeah.
So you just want to get into it?
Yeah.
Professor Peterson, let's begin with you. Why are you against the use of...
I want to mention something here, too. There is the most awesome clip in this video that they chose where this trans activist talks about how you can just take when you meet a trans person, you can just take your cell phone out and put their pronouns into your cell phone for you, which is like such a huge ask. But they don't use that clip like that. They don't mention that clip at all in this
and
video.
even that doesn't work if you can change your presentation daily.
Oh, I know.
Your pronoun
Yeah.
daily.
If you're gender fluid, what is there an app for that? Does it text all your friends when you decide you're going to change your gender? Dan,
I think
Dan D for $2 says orthodontics. Yeah, I know. We're all thinking it.
I think one of the issues people have with the whole gender pronouns thing is how capricious it is. Like, it changes from day to day what you're supposed to say, and you're immediately like, your reputation is called into question if you get it wrong. And I think that's what irritates people so much.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, it's awful.
alternate pronouns?
I'm against the use of legislation to determine what words that myself and other people are required to utter.
Okay, here Jordan Peterson makes it appear that the C-16 bill was going to in some way enforce him to make him use the pronouns, the preferred ones of his students,
Yeah.
the transgender ones specifically.
Thereby altering his free speech, which, for the record, I would be against.
Yep.
That's not what this bill is at all, though.
No, if you actually look at the wording of the bill, we'll put some of it on the screen. It actually...
Yeah, both of these guys are attorneys, by the way.
But it's not even that. It's like this interpreted with something else. I don't remember what it's called. Causes the
human rights
compelled
clause.
speech.
The human rights court's thing.
And it's also the perception, because the whole Lindsay Shepherd thing happened because of Bill C-16. That whole Lindsay Shepherd interrogation episode that we were all familiar with, Lindsay Shepherd got dragged in to her instructor. She was a TA in Canada and got dragged in front of her instructors because she showed a Jordan Peterson video in class, and they said that she wasn't allowed to do it because of Bill C-16. So even though maybe they're correct and by the letter of the law Bill C-16 was being incorrectly used by the activists, if the activists have it and use it, even if they're using it incorrectly, that makes a difference. That's something you have to take into consideration. Ausyarr, you want to read my super chat?
Okay, it says C16 is much more in depth than most people know.
Critter bugging for $2. Thanks for the super chats, guys.
Entirely, all it does is take that protected classes and add transgender people and people of different gender identities and how they choose to gender themselves and adds them to that protected class list. So it's the same as, like, you can't discriminate against black people or people
due to their skin color.
Sure. Or whatever, or people who are gay because they are gay.
You can't walk into the streets and say, kill all the N-words, kill the Jews. It's the same shit. It's just expanding their verbiage to include trans people, or those that just have a different gender identity altogether, just to kind of cover their bases. Yeah. Because you can't not give someone a job because you think they should have a ding-ding when they have a hoo-ha.
But would you use alternate pronouns if a student asked you to?
I think I've made my position on that clear already.
Perhaps not to our audience at home who are just being
It's
introduced to
yes.
this. Would you use alternate
I know. Did you guys see my video? I made a video on my Think Club channel where he's like, "Yeah, I would use she."
So long as it's not compelled.
Yeah, exactly. But I love his attitude here. He's like, hell. He's like, I made my position clear. This video that they're using was when Jordan Peterson's job was in jeopardy. So it's just knowing that, I think, means a lot. Like, he's definitely under a lot of stress here. Critter bugging for $2 says, leave here. I should be on stream. I know this shit. I don't know if we actually could get you on stream, even if we could. So, but send me a DM on Twitter. I'll have you on another stream.
No pronouns.
This is a tactic that Jordan Peterson, and as we go on through the series, I'm sure we'll look at several other interviews he's done over time. Again, we said earlier, he's very calculated. He does this all the time. He never says more than he has to in any given moment, and this is part of his strategy, it appears. It's not like he ever comes out and says this directly, but as someone who's parsed a lot of this material over the past week or so, in any given circumstance, he's compartmentalizing what he says, so you never get the entire picture of how horrible his worldview is until you put all the puzzle pieces together yourself.
Yeah, he never says more than he has to, as opposed to gets to the point with few words. That's pithiness.
Yeah, totally. And also, it's like, is this not the height of mind reading here? It's like they're gonna tell us.
It's a puzzle too.
Yeah, you got to put it together.
Yeah,
I can see it behind them. They're just missing the string. It's like they need the back there. They need all the pictures of Jordan Peterson with all connecting the dots. I think they've been reading a lot of Huffington Post or something.
I just saw that.
Oh, the hit pieces are amazing. Steve, you want to jump in?
The thing about Jordan Peterson is kind of like Donald Trump. Like, I think there's a lot to criticize there, but somehow so many of his critics come across as hysterical because they are, and they somehow manage to overreach. And as somebody who's like, thinks Jordan Peterson is a mixed bag, that irritates me more than anything, because he can always point to his idiotic criticisms channeled towards him.
Give us one of the reasons why I'm glad to have you on is because give us some of those. You always have like the measured criticisms. You're not just saying like, let's read his mind. His secret motives are.
Well, let's keep going with the video because they touch on some things that I actually agree with.
Okay.
And luckily, all the puzzle pieces are intentionally disparate, so you have to go to a speech, to a book, to another speech, to a Patreon live stream.
Right. So if you just read the book or you just read that, it sounds maybe a little bit reasonable, but when you put it all together and you look at the context and look at some of the quotes he's had, it paints this picture of a person who is very against basically anything that has come out of postmodernism. He said as much. He's not, and that's not wrong in and of itself, but his reaction to basically people wanting, I don't know, to be treated equally, to be treated fairly, is to say, no, fuck you, you can't tell me what to do, which is not a reasonable response. That's a child's response.
It's an extremely conservative world.
Oh my God, the irony is just overflowing here. I can't... Like, aren't these guys just anti-religious? Like, they don't want religion telling them what to do? Like,
they're anti-conservative, too, just to be clear. I mean, those two are not the same thing, but they're often put together.
But they're saying that they don't, like, they're saying Jordan Peterson's argument is, I don't want people to tell me what to do. That is their argument on religion. Is it not? Am I wrong?
I think so. That would be the that's what I would get from little I've watched of theirs, is don't give me these rules and I will make my own rules.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just so brimming with irony here. It's like, you have to listen to the people that we listen to. You have to do what the people we follow say.
Worldview, and one that is very much coached by religion. And if maybe you're a fan of Jordan's work, and you're also a fan of our work, and you think, Hugo and Jake, I don't get that just at all. By the end of this, I promise you will. I promise you will. Even like, you had a short discussion with a Jordan B. Peterson fan not too long ago, and you were like, hey, was he sexist right here? Is that what he was doing?
At the time, yes.
Yeah,
This was in regard to the New York Times interview, which we'll get to next time, because there's plenty of quotes in here that are just awful.
Yeah.
How about this? You want me to...
Just read one. Just read one.
See. You know, you can say, well, isn't it unfortunate that chaos is represented by the feminine? Well, it might be unfortunate, but it doesn't matter, because that's how it's represented. It's been represented like that forever, and there are reasons for it. You can't change it. It's not possible. This is underneath everything. If you change those basic categories, people wouldn't be human anymore. They'd be something else. They'd be transhuman or something. We wouldn't be able to talk to these creatures. That's in regard to his, and we'll talk about this next time in the book. He has...
That comment didn't seem very incendiary to me.
A lot to do
well,
with...
you could take away the gendered language from the mythology of chaos and order, and I still think it all lines up. So their concern is the feminine part. So if you just remove that, it's still chaos is
Jordan Peterson.
Chaos is creativity and destruction, and order is stability and tyranny.
Jordan Peterson's argument, though, is that there is, like, Haidt would call it the moral matrix, that there is what does Jordan Peterson call it? The metaphysical substrate. So Jordan Peterson would argue that there's a metaphysical substrate that connects us all in our brains, not magically, but that we all have a different biologically, genetically evolved concept of the world that's in our brains. And that concept is a narrative fiction type concept, which goes along with a lot of the science. Why, like, a lot of people have discovered, if you want to teach people things, teaching them in narrative story is the way to do it. It's why we like movies. It's why we like music. Well, he's saying that metaphorical substrate comes gendered, which makes perfect sense. It's like...
So here's one of my criticisms of Peterson. I think he takes what you're talking about, and he says because, various religions have talked about that metaphorically, that cashes out belief in religion. And I don't think that it does.
Explain.
Or at least the utility of religion. Because, to me, the utility of religion is directly tied to whether or not it's true. And to say that, well, because these vague concepts within a religion reflect in evolutionary psychology, therefore religion is good for us, I just don't follow. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying here.
But why is the truth, like, we have placebos where the value, the usefulness of them are not tied to the factual reality of what they are? Why can't religion...
There are useful lies, but would you agree that generally what's true is what's good for us?
It depends upon the context. It completely depends upon the context.
Pragmatism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's if it's useful and leads to good outcomes, then it's necessarily true.
But that doesn't make it true. This is the Sam Harris thing. Right, it doesn't make it factually true. It just means it's evolutionary.
It makes it wise. It makes it wise.
We tend to think white lies are good.
Ausyarr, go ahead.
We tend to think white lies are good.
Yeah, there's all kinds of context. Sorry, Ausyarr, I keep interrupting you.
I was about to say, we lie to our family members all the time, so...
I never lie to my family members.
You want your facts to lead to the goals that you desire.
Yes, Mum, I did my homework.
Santa will come and visit you as a reward.
Oh, Santa's the perfect allegory. Like, we celebrate Christmas as a way to rejuvenate our collective kindness, and religion is kind of the same way. The thing for me is I don't understand how you implant these ideas into people if you don't do it. I mean, you got to do it some way. Like,
why not just preach kindness? Why preach Santa Claus as a conduit to that?
It's easier for kids to comprehend story.
Right, but see, that's my whole thing here. Is it's the infantilization of adults. Like, he's preaching to young men. Shouldn't he just preach the values in and of themselves? Which he does, in fairness, but he sees religion as a conduit to that. Shouldn't he just why use that as a middleman for the values he believes in?
So much of this stuff is unconscious. Go ahead, Rebel.
I would say because not everyone's going to accept it as easily. If someone's just telling you be kind, you're like, well, who are you? If you're saying God wants you to be kind, it's like, oh okay. Which is Nietzsche's point in essence.
It's a fundamental misunderstanding that many of the atheists have. Religion is not a failed science. Religion is a successful organization tool. And God, the reason why God is a psychopath is because he's the hangman. He's the judge and jury. He's the one that motivates people not to do bad things, which is pro-social, good for everyone. Pragmatic Culture for $5 says, considering most of these guys are determinists, it's impossible for them to believe in a concept of truth in the first place. Is that aimed at us, Pragmatic Culture? Because I don't I think I know that. Please use our terminology. Do you mean wisdom or do you mean facts? So,
I don't know if Hugo and Jake are determinists. I'm not a determinist, so
I don't even know if I know what a determinist is. Are you mean like a biological determinist?
You don't believe in free will, I think would be the definition.
I believe in free will, so I'm not a determinist. Shall we continue?
Archetypes and mythical stories and how they reflect reality. From what I've parsed again so far from the book and from what he said, I don't think Jordan Peterson believes in objective reality.
Yeah.
He might believe it exists, but that...
What do you guys think about that? Does Jordan Peterson believe in objective morality?
So they brought this up in the video I watched, and I think they're just flat wrong. They're misreading it. He thinks that the people that wrote the Bible didn't write the Bible as if they were interpreting and presenting factual reality. They were presenting it as pragmatic and lessons to be learned and metaphors.
Right. So
not that Jordan Peterson believes that's all that is. There's no idea. I don't think there's like any sort of subjective idealism going on here.
Right. Anyone else?
That's fairly irrelevant to how he decides to operate within the world. He believes that certain things, these mythic ideals, the idea of Eve in the garden, the idea of Pandora's box, the idea of women being these agents of chaos is in stories because it is intrinsically true of a biology and nature, and that is what it is, and women should know their place, basically. And I'm not only the one saying that, by the way.
It's not...
Let me go...
I'm not the only one saying that. I read that in the New York Times. Otto, you want to say something?
No, they're coming at it from the wrong direction. They're saying that because he defines archetypal masculine and feminine in a certain way, that he believes that all women are this way. And that's just how they're represented in story.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not even male. It's not even male and female or men and women, in my opinion, because I would say I more embody the feminine archetype, but I am a man.
Yeah.
So
he talks specifically about feminine and masculine. He's not even talking about people. Like a woman could easily embody the masculine, and a man could easily embody the feminine. He's just saying that these are the archetypes. Which makes perfect sense. I actually did read. I resisted getting the book, but then everyone seems like every Fedora tipper on the block seems to be wanting to debunk this book. I think So I'm like, shit, I got to read this. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to read it was because I feel like he's covering a lot of the science that I'm already familiar with. But I got to tell you, I put on the first chapter to go to bed. Sometimes I listen to books when I'm falling asleep. And I was just in rapt attention, man. He is a good writer. He is a good writer. Am I alone in that? Do you guys disagree?
I think he's a better writer than he is talker.
Yeah, I was impressed. So it's been a pleasant read, definitely. Critter Bugger wants to get on, Pat. JP isn't preaching that God is truth. He's saying we can use the meta stories talked about in the Bible to help us in life. I agree 100%. And that's what Hugo and Jake don't seem to get.
Yeah, that's what the series on the psychological significance of the biblical stories was.
If ideas talked about thousands of years ago follow humanity, they must have some truth. Exactly. And that is my argument. That is the most devastating argument I find against the anti-theist. If you like in product development now, they're doing all of these evolved systems for developing software. They're stealing from nature to develop tangible products because they realize that evolution is a product cycle that has worked for thousands and thousands of years. And the cultural product of Christianity has been through that evolution, that product cycle. So when anti-theists want to come out and they want to talk about secular humanism or whatever, that is a theory in a book that's never been through a product cycle. It's still just on paper. Am I wrong? Can I get an A, man?
What do you think of Sam Harris's rebuttal then to this? Is that you can do that with any book, even a cookbook?
I'm not sure that I fully understand what his intention is. Like that's a feature. Yeah, that you can do it with a cookbook is fucking amazing.
Sam Harris, he in EndNote in The End of Faith, basically went to a Barnes & Noble and he took a cookbook and he took a recipe for I forget what, but he gave everything a whimsical interpretation and made it wise, therefore. Correct. And I think his argument would be that's what people do with the Bible, which I more or less agree. That's not to say that there aren't significant stories that resonate in the Bible, obviously, because they exist in other books too, like resurrection myths, flood myths, all the rest. My problem is, like, it's fine if that's what you want Christianity to be, but that's not always what Christianity is in reality.
I would say that the ideas are tangible in our brains, and that the capability that humans have is they can focus those tangible ideas, that the myths and whatnot that Jordan Peterson is talking about. They can focus those tangible ideas on any object, on any idea. Like the idea that we can turn a cookbook into something sacred, form a team around that, and set out to conquer the world is the advantage that human beings have. So then
why use the Bible?
The Bible is probably the best physical manifestation of those ideas that are in our head. They're less susceptible to people shooting down than the actual cookbook is. I mean, we don't know until we get the cookbook out there into the real world and people start using it. I mean, they're trying. Like I was watching some Matt Dillahunty videos. I became interested in him when he debated Jordan Peterson because it just seemed like they were talking past each other. But he's pitching a morality that is a secular humanist morality. That secular humanist morality is never going, like, until a number of people adopt it, we don't really know the successfulness of it. Like the advantage that Christianity has is people are willing to adopt it. One of the reasons why the iPhone is successful is because people are willing to adopt it.
So secular humanism has no success because it won't be given the ability to propagate for thousands of years because people won't accept it.
Well,
so
go ahead.
Would you say the same thing about Islam because people have adopted that?
There is a the context matters, because when you're talking about evolution, you're talking about an environment. And I believe Islam is more of an honor culture and is suited more towards an honor culture environment. I think one of the clashes between the West and the Middle East is that America, the Western nations, they've transformed into dignity cultures, and their religion very much, the manifestation of the dignity culture that they're focusing on, the biblical texts, are dignity culture. So the social environment very much matters. The manifestation in the people's brains is different with Islam. So do you understand why Islam is a better representation of what's in their brains, and that's why they're gravitating towards it?
Okay, but if we're looking at this from a Darwinian standpoint, doesn't an honor culture, religion of an honor culture like Islam, have an advantage over a religion that preaches a dignity culture like Christianity? We see that Islam is slowly taking over Europe. Doesn't that then prove that Islam is more useful because it's got an evolutionary advantage? Using the Peterson logic.
It's tough because the dignity culture and the honor culture, I think, will win out over the dignity culture. I think the dignity culture is kind of a domestication of us. And I think, like, this is one of the reasons why I think the immigration thing is toxic. Like, it's so bad. They're inviting all these people from an honor culture into a dignity culture, and those people are just like sitting ducks. So, I mean, I don't know how that. So they're religion. The idea behind religion is that it unites us into groups to compete against other groups. So what's happening is the immigrants are coming over. They have Islam that unites them into a group. That group is an honor culture, and that honor culture is doing battle with the dignity culture, and the dignity culture is losing. Does that make sense? I
agree. I think the honor culture will inevitably beat a dignity culture.
Yeah, because it's more violent.
I think that's why identity politics has gotten so out of hand, is because in order to beat identity politics or an honor culture, you need to engage in it yourself. But that doesn't allow you to move forward into the dignity culture, which is where people want to be, or beyond that to something better.
Yeah, exactly.
You're basically stuck fighting against your polar opposite.
But my point is, if you're going to make that, if you're going to use the logic that what is useful to us is wisdom, then isn't Islam more useful then? Because it's going to, like you said, it's going to overtake an honor culture.
But
dignity culture.
Go ahead, Rebel. You're going to say
depends on where you want to go.
Yeah,
if you
it depends
want to
on
win
the goal.
Battle currently, then yes, it's the best option. But if you want to get beyond the current paradigm, then you have to fight it with something else, or not fight and try to convince people not to fight.
Or merge the cultures, which is what the progressives blindly believe is going to happen, even though it's not. Pragmatic Culture for $2 says, Sam Harris is philosophically illiterate. Man, you didn't have to pay $2 to get me to say that. It's sad. It's sad because Sam Harris is a philosopher, and I completely agree. Like, I agree with Sam Harris on a ton of things. So, here we go.
One more quote. Okay, well, we don't have to go into it too deep, but just to give you kind of a think about this, as if there's a really great Twitter account, as if it were is it Jordan B. Peterson or a prophet of Islam? And I mean, it's really like, if you just look through it from just a different lens.
Did these guys forget all their fallacies? Come on, I thought atheists knew their fallacies. Guilt by association fallacy. Everyone take a drink.
If
not a white
if
guy
Jordan
from
looks at stories from Bibles and the Quran, right, for significant meaning, right, obviously he's going to say stuff from the Quran. Therefore, he's obviously going to sound like a prophet.
I think it might also be good to point out that Jordan Peterson doesn't know what to do with Islam at this point, because he's not sure if it's like Christianity or if it's just a political tool almost.
Yeah, he has said that. I feel the same way, and every time I talk about Islam, I don't know enough about Islam. I'm currently deconstructing Christianity because, like, I'm looking at it like the product cycle. Like when they develop new products, and they borrow from nature because nature's been through this iterated development cycle. I'm looking at Christianity like, what is it there that allows us to transform from an honor culture to a dignity culture, which I am a firm believer that a dignity culture is better. So there are certain memes in Christianity that I think we need to get into the culture. And I think one of the main memes is forgiveness, which I think is the central tenet of Christianity. But I don't know what the central tenet of Islam is. And I don't know if Islam is based in forgiveness or revenge, because our moral intuitions are more in tune with revenge. That's what people want. They want revenge. Revenge feels good. That's why we take them out and put the blindfold on them or string them up, right? Like the town pedo. We take care of it. We don't try them. We hang them up on a tree, right? I'm just to be clear, trial. That's the right thing to do. Like, dignity culture is the way to go. But I'm sure Islam is more of an honor culture where they think the other, like, obviously they stone people to death, right? They bury them up to their heads and stone people to death. Pragmatic culture for $5 says Islam won't survive Islam. They will stagnate both culturally and technologically, and those Muslims who want to advance will wipe out those who don't. Yeah, see, I tend to agree with that.
I mean, they have stagnated culturally and technologically.
Exactly. Why?
The thing is, they're winning a numbers game, though, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's one of the things that's one of the things that the atheists constantly get wrong. They think that religion is growing, and really or that atheism is growing. Atheism isn't growing because they are outbreeding us.
But isn't evolution essentially a numbers game?
Yeah,
more numbers means a higher chance of success. So sure, yeah.
Things change though, because what humans do is they organize into groups, and if those group members can be automated, things change. So that's one of the reasons why I'm focused on the technological development in the West, is because I worry that the elites are going to have a technological advantage in that they're going to have, man, as soon as they have the robot army, we're fucking done, man. We're done.
They even do now. They're pricing people out of home ownership, because people that can own homes are in tech, or people that have the money to own homes are in tech.
Yeah.
That has more to do with like rent control, local laws and stuff. I would argue, certainly in the case of San Francisco.
All right, this is a super chat, so I have to call you guys cucks, but I got to admit it feels good. the guys on your
I don't have a girlfriend, so I can't be a cuck.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yikes.
The guys on your stream are cucks, just saying. Critter bugging. You seem to know what you're talking about, Critter. I
see why he wants to join.
Yeah, technologically, I can't really. I would invite pragmatic culture on as well, but we're like, the stream is barely being held together by popsicle sticks here. So let's move on. We're only 7 minutes in, and we've already got a good argument going, though. I like that.
Toronto, but just any sort of part of the caliphate, whatever. It really sounds terrible.
Yeah. Here's something he said, for instance, about the recent attack by Alec Minison, who drove through Toronto and he killed some people with his car.
Yeah.
He said, violent attacks are what happens when men do not have partners, and society needs to work to make sure those men are married.
Rebel, what's going on?
It's just hasn't happened.
Can we expect an attack out of you soon? You don't seem like the attack type.
I am way too introverted. I don't know. It's like,
That's all right.
I can barely do these streams sometimes.
When we go out and grab a bunch of women off the street, we'll take care of you.
I have to admit that this phrase threw me off a bit. I haven't looked in the context of this when I watched this video of where this phrase came from or what he meant behind it.
I actually made a video on the Think Club channel where he clarifies it, because they're just taking him out of context. I mean, he talks about enforced monogamy, and he's like, I can't even believe I have to say this. He tells a great story about how You know, when you just get married and you come home and you tell your dad, guess what, Dad? I've been out screwing around. And your dad is like slaps you up the side of the head. Like, what are you doing that for? Jeez. Like, that's enforced monogamy. Like, and he's like, you don't even tell your dad because you know he's going to be pissed. Like, that's enforced monogamy. Like, polygamy is illegal. That's enforced monogamy. It's like so simple.
And Mr. Peterson says of the Toronto Killer, the cure for that is enforced monogamy. That's actually why monogamy emerges.
Yeah.
Look, he's so happy with himself just because he's like, yeah, I'm totally strawmanning this guy.
Forced monogamy.
Yeah. Now
Trigger words.
He'll go into backpedal about this, by the way.
Yeah.
Saying, and he does this very often, saying stuff like, "Oh, well, maybe that's not right, but I think it might be the best way," or he'll very clearly. He asserts a lot of things without ever like fully endorsing them, if there's a way. And he'll go on here after he just said no about calling people or their pronouns. This is actually one of the few times, and this is early on. This is right when he starts being like in the eye.
Anyone?
Yeah. Of the public.
It's like backpedal versus
explain
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, clarifying your position, maybe.
It's.
Didn't you just say he was pithy earlier, though?
I think he could have phrased that forced monogamy thing better, to be honest. Like, he, instead of having to explain himself, because that's a very loaded statement, literally.
You do lose clarity with pithiness, so he's got it wrapped up in a tight statement, and then he gets taken out of context.
But that's the thing. You praised him earlier for his pithiness. You said he gets to the point, and now you are praising him for clarification.
Well, I like enforced monogamy. I love enforced monogamy. Are you kidding me? That's obviously a guy who's married. He knows how it works.
But adultery isn't illegal. So technically, I mean,
adultery is illegal. What are you talking about?
No, it's not.
It is in some states.
It's not a criminal offense, but it's a civil offense because you're married. You have you take vows when you get married.
Is he?
It's one of the reasons why you can get. It's one of the reasons why you can get a divorce.
It's social enforcement, as far as I can understand.
It's social enforcement, but it's also legal enforcement if you don't want to get a divorce.
But enforcement means force. So, like, social enforcement is just using social pressure, correct?
Yeah.
Well, pressure is still force.
No, it's not. Not social pressure.
So is it like...
Says the taxationist theft guy.
You don't get thrown in jail for it, but if you refuse to pay the fine, you can lead to jail type of thing?
Where is there a fine for adultery?
Well, if you commit adultery, as far as I can tell, and then people take you to court and want to get divorced, and if you reject all that, then that leads to jail.
You've obviously never slept in a car, Steve. There is a fine. It's called your wife hates you. I love just the fact that they're like, nah, you said it, you can't take it back. Nope, you meant it. They're like these guys are just mind readers. It's awesome.
He actually does assert right here, no, I would not call someone by their pronoun, which, by the way, let the MAGA hats and the Dave Rubin fans and just the rest of them got very, very excited about this.
The thing about that, too, no one's saying you can't do that.
Right.
We're just saying if you choose to not call people by their preferred pronouns, you're an asshole.
Right, and that's fine. You can be an asshole. That's okay.
That's called that's enforced pronoun usage right there.
I think you'll find someone out there saying you can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And they specifically earlier asked him about alternative pronouns, and then in the next few minutes they're going to show the list of the Tumblr pronouns. But right now they're saying that if he does not choose to call someone a Zir, that he's an asshole for not doing so. But I think specifically he clarified, for the most part, male or female.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, they're saying blanketly like everyone is going to think he's an asshole, and that's just not the case. One of the reasons why he's as big as he is because people look at him for doing the exact same thing and say he's a saint. Like, where he's just pulling that out of his butt.
I think there's some question begging going on here. Like, I certainly don't think it should ever be illegal to call somebody the wrong pronoun. Should it come at a reputational cost, though? And they seem to believe that it should. I have mixed feelings about that. Certainly, I think that Zur and Z are just silly, but like, should I call Blair White a he? I don't know. That's a much more difficult question. They have their minds made up.
If culture leads in the way that if you don't use preferred pronouns and people just refuse to associate with you, that's their right to do so. We have freedom of association. So
sure, but should they conduct themselves in that way?
I don't know about the morality of it. I just society sets up its own rules.
Because they're definitely speaking to the morality of it. They have their decision made, and I don't think it's as easy as they portray it to be.
Yeah, but all morality does is it solidifies people into groups, and there's the group that is going to be with Jordan Peterson, the group that's going to be against him. Like, they're coming out strong, saying we think you're an asshole, and we want everyone to agree with us. Their like to dislike ratio obviously says, well, guess what? A bunch of us don't disagree, or a bunch of us do disagree with you. So, I mean, this is how morality is kind of a democratic process.
There is if you give them the semantic ground, though, it is let's say implicit acceptance of their biological argument. So that's like a Ben Shapiro point: is I'm not going to call you she because I don't believe you're she, and
right.
So that's perhaps is a moral argument against these two guys.
Yeah, the moral argument. I'm very much the longer this goes on, I'm very much against the whole trans thing. I'm against the whole trans activist thing. I think it's dangerous for kids. It bugs the shit out of me. So I'm definitely against these guys in that realm. I mean, I think there are people with gender dysphoria, but I think right now just having these conversations is creating a ton more gender dysphoria out there. Or not, it's not creating gender dysphoria, it's creating people who think that they can gain some social status by labeling themselves non-binary or transgender. It's a way for them to instantly feel special.
Oh, for sure.
Which is dangerous. It's totally dangerous.
Gender dysphoria is real as far as I know.
Yeah.
But I think the question is how do you best treat that? And I don't know if gender modification and indulging somebody's delusions is the best way to treat that. Maybe I'm wrong. That's a medical question.
No, you're right. You're right. Like, no. You slap them up and you said, shut up, boy, get in there and do your homework. That's how you treat it.
It's a medical question that I certainly can't speak to. I generally think that indulging somebody's delusions is not healthy. Like, if somebody's schizophrenic and they think they're being chased by a monster.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, guess what? You are being chased by monsters. Yeah, that's a good idea.
There is a monster, and it's Donald Trump.
That's right. Yeah.
It's interesting, though, just a side note. Preferred practice for dementia patients is to indulge their delusions.
Holy shit.
Okay, so yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think we've settled this gender dysmorphia question by any means.
Just to clarify, dementia is different than schizophrenia. I'm not saying it should be treated the same way.
But how far does that go,
dementia
Rebel?
is so different.
Do you give them the car
the
keys?
brain is
What do you do? Do you give the dementia people the car keys or what?
No.
How far does it go?
If they ask if their long dead husband is coming home from work, you say yes because they won't remember that he died unless you remind them that he died.
But if they say, "Hey, I'm a limo driver. Give me the keys. I gotta go drive someone to work."
You have authority over them as
right.
workers.
Pragmatic culture says, "I will have you in Sunday Mass yet." I thought when I first read that, I thought he was inviting me on a live stream tomorrow. I was like, I ain't going. If I went to church, chances are the church would get struck by lightning. I can't endanger people's lives like that.
Is that at a black church?
Oh my God. We don't. Pragmatic culture
Black Baptist church.
Pragmatic culture is an anon. For all we know, he's like a transgender black woman in a wheelchair.
don't expect us to not call you out on it.
Right, there's social currency.
You know, we're so afraid of you calling us out, Opie. I'm terrified here.
I mean,
please don't
you
call
joke.
me out.
You joke, but like people have done their reputation, or people. There's a lot of reputational damage that comes with not respecting the PC line on transgenderism. Correct?
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why Jordan Peterson is so popular, because Jordan Peterson has faced the reputational damage. He's still facing it every single day, and the longer he survives, he shows people that they can face that reputational damage and win. That is one of the reasons why I think he's so popular.
I mean, he has kind of. I mean, he's definitely faced the reputational damage from the PC left. That's for sure. Though every Huffington Post article about him proves that. But he's shown that you can build a reputation with an entirely different community and actually make a lot of money doing that. So I don't know. Our culture is is becoming more and more partitioned. I don't know if reputational damage from one part of it is going to mean anything anymore.
Well, and these guys are actively suffering reputational damage just in the fact that they're so inept. Are we not just damaging their reputation right now by showing that they're complete morons?
And everyone who goes after Jordan Peterson suffers reputational damage, right?
Yeah, but it's not undeserved reputational damage, because they're totally misrepresenting him. They totally don't they're online right now, giving legal advice when they aren't attorneys. They're giving, medical advice, and they're not doctors. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. But I think so much of this, I don't want to get too far outside of what we're talking about, but I think so much of this free speech arguments and these boycotts and whatnot come down to, does somebody deserve this? Whereas people are afraid to talk, or people are talk about it in cliches too much. Yeah, and that's why you can't divorce it from the actual science of transgenderism. If I'm making any sense at all, I'm kind of cluttered here.
They can't. I have no ill will towards these guys at all. I would love to pry them out of the progressive bubble. I think that's one of the reasons why I started doing YouTube, just because I thought it was interesting that there were so many people who just had this completely their metaphorical substrate is just completely different. They can literally read an article and see completely different things in it. The enforced monogamy to them is just, it's an atom bomb, right? It's kind of weird. It's crazy.
And this puts you in the red.
And why not?
Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
First of all, as we said before, again, this law in no way makes it illegal to misuse people's pronouns. It's all about just actual, discrimination or actual harassment, the same as it would be about any other protected class. It's just adding transgender people to that list.
And again, I understand, as a person who, I value free speech, as a person who says a lot of crazy shit sometimes for comedic purposes, I think it's important, and he very clearly misinterpreted what this law meant, and then got upset. And because he's the way he is, he spoke out. But there's no...
Because he's the way he is. He's just that way.
Isn't not using someone's pronoun multiple times, right, sort of considered harassment by them, really?
Exactly.
And therefore it would make it illegal?
Yeah, that's the whole point. First of all, I think harassment is our God-given right. No stalking or anything. Let's not go crazy here, but
we need to risk it in order to learn how to think and speak. That's what the Kathy Newman day was all about.
Totally. You have to listen.
No way Peterson, in the interim, has not been corrected on this issue, even by this point, because these people are here to correct him. So I don't know how you could remain ignorant. I just don't know how you can keep it going.
I'm thinking.
So the correction thing just reeks of political correctness, right?
I think they're talking about the actual content of the law.
It reeks
I'm
confirmation bias too.
I'm hesitant to comment on the content of the law myself because it's Canadian law and I am not a lawyer, much less a Canadian lawyer.
There is no law in Canada.
Something recently, I heard someone say something about ideal.
Somebody say something.
No, I was just throwing out a current topic.
Logs. That's ringing in my ears for some reason.
We have a graphic to show our audience at home just some of the pronouns being used
here
or
it comes.
asked to be used as alternates. Z or zim, Z or here, Z or zir, also hey, or a rather, and per.
This I wanted to bring up specifically because in regard to this sort of bill, or when you're talking about people's preferred gender pronouns in general, people tend to bring up this Tumblr, Z, Zim, him. No, for one thing, the vast majority of the people on this planet are not transgender. You're probably not going to run into that many in your life in the first place. If you do, 99.9% of those people are just probably someone who says, I was biologically born a male, I feel female, so I'm going to attempt to live my true self.
This often...
What percentage of those people are trenders? Anyone know?
Oh, I want to point out that Michael Rowlands, the AKA on Twitter, Music Man Mike, is now transgendered.
No way. You're kidding me.
No, he just doesn't identify as a man, and that's it.
Yep.
He's basically a guy who just doesn't use man as a pronoun, and therefore he's transgendered.
He's just looking for some way to mess with people, which is exactly what Jordan Peterson is talking about. Like, if you're coming at me, if you're messing with me, I'm going to slap you silly, boy. Christy Winters is the same thing, man. She's just looking for ways to mess with people. Are you kidding me? This is like the perfect tool for them.
Does not represent the trans community, but the gender fluid community, for the record. Which is fine. And if someone
so they're serious about that gender fluid community.
That's exactly the point too. I think a lot of times what Jordan Peterson has to say about enforced artificial gender fluid and gender neutral pronouns gets conflated, or it muddied the waters with the transgender topic, and then male versus women and masculine and feminine, and it gets muddied. And I agree with what they're saying here about how there's a distinction between the gender fluid and these artificial words versus simply transgenderism.
With this law, there is no distinction between gender fluid and transgender. They're still gender identities that are protected under the law. So for them saying these weird pronouns from Tumblr, it doesn't matter because it only matters to gender fluid. It matters because gender fluid is included in this law as well.
I'd love to know if these two guys would refuse to use those Tumblr pronouns if they were asked to.
They'd be assholes if they did.
Exactly.
I'm gonna ask them right now.
Oh, are you on Twitter? Yeah, add them up. Someone wanted me to send our link to them, but I don't follow them on Twitter. So
honestly, if someone says, "Hey, I prefer they as a pronoun," I'm okay with that.
I'm not
now, but if you are dressing what I consider and what society considers as just a dress with flowers on it, let's say the most stereotypical thing. If you're dressed with long hair and a dress with flowers on it, and I'm in customer service and I go, "Oh, thank you, ma'am," or whatever, I'm clearly not being an asshole. It's just kind of programmed in our heads.
Sure.
And you, as someone who is a non-binary and you want to be considered they, I'm not being an asshole. Just let me know. And I'm fine with that. And Jordan Peterson and mostly his fans are like, I don't want to not be an asshole. Why? Who gives a shit? If your name, it's literally someone goes, "Oh, thanks, Stan," and you're like, "My name's Jim." And they're like, "No, it's Stan. I'm calling you Stan forever."
Based on what
they're just being incredulous at this point.
Yeah, totally.
And using they as a general non-gender pronoun, that's kind of where I've landed with it, because I don't want to hear I have encountered one Zir total, and I never thought I'd even encounter that. But I've kind of landed with it's okay in my mind to use they. I'm always going to try to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for the most part, I'm not going to have. It's not going to be fill in the blank, right? Where you can just invent a word. But for the most part, if there's a non-binary opportunity, I'm going to use they. Even Dusty Smith gave me permission, so I figure I'm in the clear for that.
So you're calling Dusty Smith they now?
No, I posed the question. I said, if somebody prefers an artificial pronoun, and I simply choose to use they because I don't want to hear it, because I don't want to get into the semantics of invented words. Yeah, I'm just using him as an example, but
their analogy,
for the most part, that's okay.
Their analogy is completely wrong, though, because the analogy would be like if Stan came up and said, "My name is Star-Lord, call me Star-Lord now." And you're like, "Fuck you, your name is Stan. Like, you're Stan, I know, it's on your birth certificate." No, call me Star-Lord.
I feel like most people are like Otto, and I'm probably like that too. I just go along to get along for the most part. Like online, I can be combative, but generally in my personal life, I just try to avoid getting in fights with people.
Twitter was made for getting in fights with people. Like, it's a kind of obligatory at this point. Like, I think that's part of the problem, is that people can't distinguish like the online culture from the IRL culture. Because I don't think people are gonna. I would do the same thing. I would go along to get along.
The thing about Twitter is or being online generally is it's not real life. There are no reputational costs, like we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, it's a game.
Right.
Man Faces World says, my preferred pronoun is Atom Bomb. I will call you Atom Bomb from now on. It's done.
What I'm parsing again from what I've read of the book so far, I gather Peterson and a lot of people who follow him aren't the most secure people in the world, and that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
He pegged me. God. I feel naked to the world here. I feel naked. Are we all insecure here? It doesn't seem like it's a good description. Well, I guess I'm the only technical Peterson fan. Well, Rebel's a Peterson fan too, right?
Yeah, I like reading people's ideas, and that's what drew me to him. And then the fact that I agree with him on a lot of things is both refreshing, but I try to make sure that I keep in mind that can be a slippery slope, and I need to be thinking of ways to argue against it.
Yeah.
Is it because you're an incel?
No. I wouldn't classify myself as that, but it just happened.
I've made this distinction with Height too, because a lot of people say that I'm like a Height fan, and I keep telling people, no, I'm a fan of his ideas. Like, it's the ideas that I think are interesting. So I'll throw Peterson away like yesterday's trash if the ideas are proven wrong. Right now, I think his ideas are very interesting, and it's, for me, it's more. It's a better package for a lot of Height's ideas, which I just think is. I mean, I'm all for moving those ideas forward by, and if he's the messenger that's getting those ideas out there, if it's even if it's an incremental step in that direction, I think it's a good thing.
A lot of this has to do with, unironically, the term toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
There is, I know that maybe you cringed a little bit. Maybe you think oh God, are Hugo and Jake going to go hang out with Steve? No, he wouldn't have us. But there really is a thing. Like, I was listening to the radio the other day, and the local sports radio network does a spotlight on soldiers that return from active duty. And I tweeted this. Basically, he said that he didn't know how to cope with feelings. He grew up in a society that was like, men don't show their feelings. In the military, partially it's pragmatic because you don't want people breaking down in the battlefield, but they also give them no coping mechanisms for PTSD or anything like that. So basically he came back, and his only lashing out, his only way to express himself was through anger most of the time. Mm-hmm. And he said he's had to relearn and reprogram, and I thought, that's just so sad. Yeah. And he's making excuses for these people to say it's okay, you're supposed to act that way, as opposed to saying, no, emotions are things people endure. Like, we can all... So I find this harmful just in that sense.
Yeah.
And that's... When someone says toxic masculinity, I think you should think about, like, how men are supposed to act. It's mostly has to do with emotions and the representation of those.
It's interesting to me because the main people who tend to say, like, toxic, the minute someone mentions toxic masculinity...
And it's been used wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's been used wrong.
Absolutely.
It's been like,
So now-
comic
Now,
books.
stipulative definitions have stipulative definitions.
They got a ton of shit for this, and that they addressed in the follow-up to this video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The toxic masculinity thing, because I don't.
Oh yeah.
Is Peterson really talking about? I've never heard him use the term toxic masculinity, but Naughty Designs, $2. Thank you so much.
Books are toxic masculine. Like, no, they're comic books. It's okay if something is hyper masculine, like as a medium. But, like, you know, people aren't always that.
Sure. What I find interesting is people who rally against the most are people who are men's rights activists.
Yeah,
and one of the things that they mention a lot of the time, and this is an actual issue, is the number of suicides and people with and men with depression who don't seek out help, without recognizing that the things that often lead to that suicide and not seeking out help and not having an emotional support net around them are by definition toxic masculinity. And you can call it something else if that term just makes you angry.
I think it does. It makes a lot of people cringe. Like,
that's fine.
I have an initial reaction to be like, ugh.
But that's the term. That's
it's a term that I think is valuable.
The official term.
It's the term.
Man, Adam Bomb says for $2. This video was sponsored by the Church of Soy. Yeah, I kept thinking like, oh God, the soy boy thing is so overused, but it's so fitting. I feel it's so fitting here. Like someone got a woman brain.
Term that sociologists use to talk about this shit. It's a term. It's not. I mean, every term's made up, but it's a term that's used to describe something.
Sure. And so, yeah, that's kind of dealing with that is kind of the antithesis of how Jordan Peterson operates.
Yeah. Again, a lot of his stuff. It's looking
Question:
at
the guy on the right, does he have a front comb over? Just notice that.
You're so evil. Look at that. He's like, this guy wants to take it back. Like he goes full balls out when we get to here. When we get to the end over here.
Are we gonna watch this entire video?
I have to watch the entire thing. You guys are under no obligation to stick around. So
there's some grumblings in the chat about that, about our pace.
Yeah, we need to speed it up. So we've had some interesting dialogue, but I've done videos before and I've not finished them, and I just get savaged in the comments. So yeah.
Can you speed up the video?
No, I can't. I can't even play it at double speed, which I think is actually rude because people will want to listen to this video at double speed, and if it's the video inside the video, it's like undoable.
I hate it when people do that because I listen to things at 1.5 speed.
Totally. So I'm gonna shut up. You guys shut up. When they get ironic, we have to step in. I don't know what we can do.
I'm not the first person to say this, but it's looking at postmodernism,
cultural Marxists,
and recognizing issues, because don't get me wrong, there are issues with postmodernism. We have a lot to work through, but instead of saying we need to come up with a new way to move forward and a new way to reframe our thinking as a society to be more inclusive for everyone, he says, fuck that, let's go backwards. Reverse 1960s as fast as possible.
Extremely conservative.
See, but they're advertising their thinking on this. Like they just see conservatism as steps backwards. They think Jordan Peterson wants to go back to slavery, which is just not close to his position.
Isn't their solution to postmodernism more postmodernism? Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think postmodernism is probably the place where my opinions with Peterson really differ. I mean, it's such a complicated thing. I mean, some places I completely agree with them 100%, like their views on science and stuff like that. But all that stuff is so, I mean, I don't think the average person is gravitating towards Peterson because of his position on postmodern philosophy. Like I really don't think it's I don't think it's that. I think the materialist, rationalist perspective that he brings to religion is the reason why people are gravitating to him. The thing that interests me about this video is these people are two self-described materialist rationalists, and they can't get past the idea that he won't just come out and say, God's not real. I'm on your side. Like they
barely touched on religion at this point. It's mostly his what they perceive as his political leanings and that transgenderism. We've barely gotten there, or they've barely gotten there.
Yeah.
Conservative, that'll be displayed.
Rebel.
I didn't have much to add. He just
They are
he
saying it
sees
boils
conservatives and liberals as having their purpose and wants them to stay within their purpose, and the left has gone too far.
Yeah, exactly. The snake, the yin and yang. It's the exact same thing in Haidt's book. Haidt talks about this exact same stuff. That liberal and conservative are like the night and the day. Like they need to maintain a dialogue. They're on the same exact page.
Down to respecting their human rights.
I don't think it boils down to respecting their human rights. I think that it's an imposition on freedom of speech that's being implemented at a legislative level.
Again, not being compelled at all by the law to do this. All the law is doing is adding these people to the protected classes. He just doesn't want to call people by their preferred pronouns because it makes him uncomfortable for some reason. And that is more paramount than their, I don't know, humanity? I don't know.
I hate to keep stopping.
He almost said feelings.
But aren't they? Isn't this a total contradictory position that they're like? It's like the law isn't going to change anything, but it's going to force you to call them by their preferred pronouns, which he doesn't like. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand their position here. It's like if the law doesn't change anything, why make the law?
I'd have to watch the video more than once to really have a grasp of what they're saying, because it's not very.
It's not clear.
It's not clear. It's not lined up very well.
It is. It's very postmodern.
Well, I think it's important. We're talking about. He deals with masculine and feminine, both symbology and just like
symbology.
Social, I don't know this. I guess the way we act sociologically between people now, and adding that facet, trans people or just gender fluidity in general, tears apart that book a little bit.
Yeah.
So admitting that like people aren't masculine or feminine, which and I think we can all agree, like you probably lie on one side of the fence or the other, even if you're trans, because I mean most people, and again, you might think we're a little crazy here, but you know, gender is kind of like whatever society feels gender is.
Sure.
Right. So like. I am viewed as a man. I identify as a man, and I'm straight, which is a shame because apparently there's lots of dicks out there for me. But because I have a beard and I wear, you know, I have a deeper voice and I have short hair and I, you know, have, you know, I don't wear female clothes.
Yeah.
But like, if all of us wore dresses all the time, that would strip away something that's considered does that make sense to you guys?
Sure.
So. Like, just reaching this kind of concept with him is something he can't really get around because he can't sell books. I genuinely think Peterson is I don't think he's unintelligent. I just think he has an agenda, and he's literally said he found out how to monetize hardcore feminists.
Sure.
I mean,
you also have
he
a
understands
Patreon.
What he's doing. I don't.
Yeah, totally.
And the context of that statement is very important.
They've also
Like
just figured out how to monetize him.
He presents that he is monetizing these guys, not that he wanted to or tried to.
Peterson's the top lobster now, man. He is.
I don't think he's an idiot. This isn't like a Ray Comfort situation. This isn't a Ken Ham situation. This guy is...
I missed a super chat. Critterbuggin already protected under identifiable groups. Yeah, that's their argument.
Genuinely trying to...
I want to comment on Critterbuggin real quick.
Okay.
Why would Adam bring you into the call when he can just keep taking your money for you to contribute to the conversation?
Well, I probably would bring him into the call if I actually could.
I'm just fucking around.
Well, to be fair, he's got to butter Adam up first.
So. That's true, yeah.
I don't know
That's how I got in.
I don't know that Critter Buggin has been in my chat before, to be honest with you. So
Him.
what are you saying, Steve? Are you saying I'm doing this for the money? I don't like the implication there.
No, I was honestly, I was teasing Critter Buggin a little bit.
You're a self-avowed capitalist.
Yes, I am.
To the extreme.
With the timing.
Cult of the Lich, 125 PHP. You found video proof that gay is a mental disorder, as these two are clearly women trapped in men's bodies. Are they men's bodies, though? We don't have proof of that. Because I know more than you, just saying. Critter Buggin shuts you down, Steve.
Of this.
Are you typing,
I don't know,
Steve?
man. I got in here for free, so who knows what.
Okay.
With like Donald Trump and that entire movement underneath that, you know, like conservatism is the new punk rock. InfoWars is popular for some reason. He's very much taking those, you know, the cream of the crop of those, like the intellectuals.
Yeah.
He's like, come over here. We're liberals, but like Dave Rubin.
Here's a direct quote from the book, by the way, in the introduction. I've always thought that if people really noticed what I was teaching, there would be hell to pay. You can decide for yourself what truth there might be with that concern after reading this book. And there's a smiley face emoji.
Why are they so... Why does the smiley face emoji trigger them? They were
something to make fun of.
They were super triggered about the fact that he called it an overture too. I'm like, he's an artist. Are you kidding me? Like, these guys? I mean, they're making videos. They don't consider themselves artists. I mean, they critique movies, right? Those are art.
They have a tendency to self-deprecate. So, I don't know. It's like they criticize someone and then say, "But we're not that either." So somehow that validates the criticism.
I read that chapter and that quote. I read that quote after this, but in the context, it seemed totally normal. It didn't seem like a big deal to me.
He put a smiley face
sort of an
emoji.
artist thing to do anyway. So
yeah. Look, they got him. They got him. Oh, it's over, guys. He used a smiley face emoji in a book. I've seen that in so many books. It's like he's a little late to the party, guys. Just FYI.
Which you probably can't see.
Yeah, well, it's in there.
In the book.
It says WTF by it. Like, he's just in total... This is another reason why this video is interesting to me, because the social intuitionist model is that, like, we fight against things that just give us bad feelings, things that we innately dislike. And the innate dislike here, they're just looking for things to crap on.
They don't like that he broke a rule. He broke convention, and they don't like that.
I know. These guys are supposed to be atheists.
He's being an agent of chaos for a second. Put a emoticon in a book.
I know. It's like they're mad that he's stealing their game.
So yeah, he knows what he's doing.
I also think that if there was a naturally evolving solution to the linguistic problem that's being posed by a small fraction of the transgender community, that people would have already adopted it. We've never had a situation in the usage of English before that required legislation to produce a transformation in the manner in which people spoke.
Yes, we have. We have absolutely had that. We added African Americans to protected classes in North America. I mean, that just because Canada's not America doesn't mean that's not happened. And I'm sure, I mean, just the fact that this was added to protected class legislation in general means that's also happened in Canada. For the record, C-16 made this.
So he's just talking shit here, right? Because he doesn't understand that Peterson is talking about we've never had legislation that forces people to say something. And then the African American thing is a complete non sequitur.
It's a federal level law. In Ontario, where he lives, this was already a law in that province, which is a state, basically, if you're from the States. It was Obergefell v. Hodges before that. Does that make sense? Like, wait, states had legalized it, but some hadn't, and then federally it was recognized. This is the same exact situation, just in Canadian politics and parliament and stuff like that.
And again, I feel weird reiterating this again. This has nothing to do with forcing you to use other people's pronouns. You should still use them if you're not a dick.
Sure.
But be a dick if you want, Jordan Peterson. You're doing a good job so far.
has a very dangerous precedent. So it's one thing to tell people what they can't say. So, for example, we have legislation making it illegal to do such things as deny the Holocaust. It's a completely different thing to demand that people use certain words when they're formulating their own ideas.
What I find interesting, especially because he's Canadian and we're American, he finds it okay to limit people's speech, for instance, on something like Holocaust denial.
Whereas No, he doesn't.
I don't, and I'm as
No, he's come out and said no to that as well. So that's not true.
He doesn't like those.
He doesn't like that there's laws about denying the Holocaust. But,
Yeah.
So it's no compelled speech and no compelled ideas, I guess, either.
Peterson seems like a pretty smart guy. I don't know if we're going to catch him in some blatant inconsistency like that.
As harmful as I feel that can be,
I'm as against Holocaust denial as you can probably be, unless you were in the Holocaust.
Right.
And well, I guess they're not that against it. They were in the Holocaust.
Ooh, incendiary joke.
But I don't understand the thinking here, where he thinks that's the line that it's okay to limit speech, but for some reason I don't understand.
It's so weird. Like
so,
as a free speech advocate, how do you, as a Jordan Peterson fan, I'm talking to you, how do you reconcile the two things he just said?
Right.
Are you a free speech advocate or are you a Jordan Peterson advocate?
Because to me, that tells me he's not a free speech advocate. He's a I fucking hate trans people.
He's an ideologue. I don't know if he hates trans people. I don't want to say that. I'm saying he doesn't think that trans pronoun usage or gender fluid pronoun usage deserves respect.
Sure.
As a new concept.
Sure.
Or a relatively new concept. I mean, it's been around for decades. But
sure.
In New York City, for example, there are now 31 protected gender identities, and I see no reason whatsoever why each of those gender identities can't demand the use of their own pronoun. Absurd things like that have been happening on the University of Michigan campus, for example, where students have been given permission to tell faculty members and others what pronouns they're to be addressed by.
It genuinely doesn't matter. It's not something that you will go to jail for or be prosecuted for or even get a fine for or even get yelled at for, besides the person.
Bitch, you can go to jail for parking tickets.
Didn't some kid has to be called Your Highness or something like that?
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happened. I remember
that was pretty funny.
They obviously don't know how the legal system works. You can go to jail for a lot, like whatever they want to throw you in jail for.
They said you wouldn't even get yelled at for, and there was a whole demonstration against him.
Lindsay Shepard got yelled at big time. Man Faces World for $2. Compelled speech. How about compelled salads? I don't even know what that means.
I think he's calling them fat.
Okay.
For the record,
I get it now. It's awesome.
We were accused of just insulting these guys personally. I only called one of them fat, so I just want to clarify.
You called the other one chubby.
Whatever. Chubby and fat are not the same thing.
I've called them morons, but I mean they could. I'm curious about the backpedaling videos because it's funny that they accuse Peterson of backpedaling on the enforced monogamy when I think they did some. I saw one of the videos where I saw a lot of backpedaling going on. I haven't seen the first video yet, and they're the ones doing a series. But I mean, I saw that. I've done some Jordan Peterson videos. I know what kind of views they get. Their views seem pretty meek. I was like, interesting.
Did it as an inclusivity thing. For instance, I went to a bar recently and it said gender-neutral bathroom. You're not going to go to jail if you refuse to use the gender-neutral bathroom, but you will if you are a worker. You might not go to jail, but you might be sued civilly if you refuse someone use of your bathroom.
Sure.
Does that make sense? It's very different.
Also, he just, again, with the...
I've been seeing these gender-neutral bathroom signs on, like in restaurants, on bathrooms with one toilet, and for the most part bathrooms with one toilet have existed, as far as I can remember before this conversation. But one thing I do remember is I was in it was about 98. I was in Paris and they had the public bathrooms, and while it was the men's bathroom, and while we were in there, they had a lady, she was just in there cleaning the bathroom in the men's bathroom. So while it was open. So, I mean, the idea of the bathroom conversation, I think I've been beyond for a little bit. Like, it doesn't really, the idea of having a sign that says gender neutral is just added to bathroom facilities that have existed.
My
my
buddy went to UC Santa Cruz, and the UC Santa Cruz dorms all the bathrooms are gender neutral. So it's like you could be in there like taking a dump, and some girl could come in and start taking a shower. I'm like, this is the most uncomfortable setup I've ever been involved in.
I was in a co-ed dorm when I was in college, and that was the same there.
Really?
But no, it wasn't. There were boys' bathrooms and girls' bathrooms, but it was a co-ed dorm, so you could, in theory, take a shower anywhere or go to the bathroom anywhere.
Right.
I don't know. It's something you become tolerant of when you're in college.
Yeah, you get used to it, but the first time you go in there, you're like, this don't feel right. There's something wrong about this. But I think what happened though, what I noticed was the patterns of people kind of acclimated to it, so they would get in their rhythms where there was never any guy and girl in the bathroom at the same time. Like that just didn't happen.
I feel like this is one of the things that really agitates people about this issue. Like when I go on Twitter, all I hear about is transgender bathrooms, as if it's the most important thing in the world. Of course, it's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, but I don't know. It seems to excite people on some sort of level, agitate them.
Yeah, it's
one way or another.
It's a disgust level thing.
Yeah.
Everyone can relate. Everyone has the idea of like, I'm not going to let my little girl go sit next to ContraPoints on the in the bathroom. Are you kidding me?
All right.
City. Yeah, it's not a protected class.
They're a protected class. It's just that
not in the way he thinks, though.
Yeah.
They're not protected from you or speech. They're protected from discrimination based on those pronouns. That's very different language.
It's you saying to someone like Jake.
Yes.
Let's say you were transgender.
Does anyone understand that?
Wanted to go.
No,
do they even know what they're talking about at this point?
It's all motivated reasoning. That's one of the reasons why it's totally hilarious. It's like, okay, we have to think up good. Like you guys could at least sat down and come up with some reasonable arguments. Quiet time. Let's rationally, think this through. Nah, they're just seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
Go by she.
Okay.
I can call you he in
Yes.
Canada and not go to jail.
Yes.
I can say, hey, Jake, you manly man, you.
Hey, I appreciate that. I know the beard went. I prefer she.
Hey, man. Fuck that, man.
Yeah.
That's fine. However,
it's legal.
If the situation goes, hey, I prefer to be called a woman, and then I punch him in the face because of that, that falls under the law because I'm attempting to harm someone.
It also might be considered a hate crime, depending on how the jury goes.
Yeah. So it's not about
so
the words
C16 is redundant.
Yeah, they're saying that's why I'm like, okay, well, if you don't need the law, then why even have the law? The law is very clear, and Jordan Peterson's position is very clear. Jordan Peterson says, if the law is going to compel me to use someone's made-up pronouns, and it makes it illegal for me not to, it makes it harassment for me not to do that, that's compelled speech. Like this whole, I don't know, they're like drifting off into this, you can't punch people. Yeah, guess what? That's called assault. Like you can't punch anyone in the face.
how you discriminate based on people, how they choose to label themselves.
Now, some people have a visceral reaction to that being a hate crime, but not like punching a black person because they're black.
That should be a hate crime.
Right, I think
assuming
both
that's
are.
the motivation.
Both are, right. So if you burn, I don't know, I would consider that shooting, the South Carolina church shooting, that felt like a hate crime because he literally openly said like he wanted to, was it Dylan Roof? Is that the kid?
See, that's the problem right there. He said it perfectly. He said that felt like a hate crime. That's the problem. We need objective measurements for crimes.
What do you guys think about hate crimes in general?
I think the crime itself is sufficient.
Yeah, exactly.
If someone commits a crime, then we punish them.
That's how I feel too.
Just
it
makes people no longer equal under the law, in my opinion. So
most of the time, violent crime is a hate crime. Like, why would why would you get violent with someone if you didn't hate their guts? Translate that super chat for me, Steve. I don't know what Despacito
2.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a soon-to-be-dead meme.
Oh, okay. I'm not up to speed on my memes. Hey, $2, filthy animal. Thanks.
Despacito is the what was it? Most viewed music video or most viewed video on YouTube now.
Oh yeah, I know that song. Okay.
Nice. I'll have to check it out.
It's got Justin Bieber in it. So
I can't watch that. Never mind.
I did the math, and it's been played like on average 127 times every second since it came out last year.
Wow. If you look at the list of like the top 200 videos on YouTube, they're all songs or children's videos, just because those have such inherent advantages over regular content.
They put them on autoplay. People put them on autoplay, so they listen to them over and over again. Same with both the kids and the video. So
yeah.
No, that was a different guy. Was it?
I can't even remember.
I know one of them had a manifesto that was like really racist.
He wanted to create a race riot, basically, or race war. That's a hate crime. If you do the same thing to like the Pulse shooting, how about that? That was considered a hate crime as well. They're disparate, but similar in the way that they're both protected classes under the law. That's when it applies. It doesn't like you could walk into that church and go, "You N-words," or you could walk into the club and go, "You faggots," but like, it's not illegal. It's just fucking rude.
Do you think hate crime legislation causes hateful acts as defined to occur more often or less often?
More often.
Yeah, that's my opinion too. So it doesn't even work from a pragmatic
Not at all,
purpose.
yeah. Streisand effect. Telling people they can't do something makes them want to do it even more. I'm going on a there's trans people all over Southern California. I'm going on a misgendering spree after this. I can feel it in my bones. I can't resist. It's going to be so much fun.
I believe that's harassment and the cops could pick you up for trespassing.
Correct.
But that's about it.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So it is different.
They're multiplying rapidly.
The first cop that has to arrest someone for misgendering is just going to be like laughing the whole time.
Out of control. So the law is bad from an ethical perspective. It's sloppily written. The solution that it imposes is practically untenable.
For reference, here is literally underlined what changed in the law. They just added the terms to allow the inclusivity of transgender people or whatever, people who describe themselves with different gender, whatever.
Yeah. Is that untenable? Is that sloppily written? I feel like that, if that's sloppily written, the rest of that law is sloppily written, and you also don't consider, whatever else is under there a protected class?
Yeah.
Which maybe you don't. I'm just saying, Canada does. The government does. And that's not, and by the way, from an American perspective, we have a pretty conservative government almost always.
Yeah.
We all still consider basically all these same things. I don't think we have gender pronouns specifically in the bill, but LGBT at least.
I don't even think that is.
I don't think trans, but gay is.
Is it? Because certain states, I think, have laws where you can still.
Oh, that might be the state thing. Maybe it's not federal. Anyways, yeah, it's just one of those things. Americans in general feel pretty much on board with this, and we have 50% of the people that just are your fans.
Well, I'd like to encourage people struggling with this to be kind as their first impulse. I don't call somebody Julie if they prefer to be called Jordan.
Yeah, well, kindness is the excuse that social justice warriors use when they want to exercise control over what other people think and say.
No, you're just an asshole.
Yeah. Now, I will say, we don't jump into this very often, and we might have to with the Jordan Peterson stuff, just inherently. But
I could tell.
There are SJW.
Someone want to read my super chat? Hey, let's make Steve read it.
Okay, hold on. Pull up here. Hate crime legislation. Oh, went away.
Critter
Hate
bugging
crime
for $5
is used only as an aggravating factor in sentencing in Canada. It's always been the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Okay, cool.
So evidently hate crime makes it more severe. They take that into account when they're sentencing. They're
but does it work to decrease
super speeder?
Does it work to decrease the amount of times that those crimes occur? And
I
if it
can't believe
doesn't, then it's
misgendering.
not
We're
useful.
talking about misgendering someone being a crime. Like it just seems like involuntary manslaughter is a crime. It's still an accident. Like now we're saying that or not I'm saying involuntary vehicular manslaughter is an accident. Like misgendering is just like are people out there deliberately misgendering people? It just doesn't seem like a huge issue to me.
Hold on, you got another chat. Should
I
I
know.
read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
The mind of America is seized by a fatal dry and it's only a question of time. It's only a question of time before the real.
Before all that, the mind control will run
amok in a frenzy of stupid, impotent fear. Hunter S. Thompson. Okay. I have to take issue with something Peterson said.
Okay.
He said kindness is what SJWs use to control language, which, they make appeals to kindness. Like, shouldn't you be nice? Use the gender pronouns. Doesn't everybody seek to control language in that way? Isn't it just different rules they're offering? Like, all these conservatives who are outraged about Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the anthem. Isn't their whole thing like, you hate America and the troops? Like, isn't somebody constantly making appeals about how you should use your speech?
Yeah, both sides do.
So I would say it's a broad. I don't know. It occurs in a lot of different groups and people, and I don't agree with anyone that does it.
But no, I'm saying you necessarily have to do it. Do you think that there's no controls over your language?
I can't think of any. But maybe I haven't thought about it very well.
Drive through the hood and say nigger?
What are you doing? You can't say that on my street.
If I had the desire to, I would.
You would?
Oh my God.
If I had the desire to.
I mean, there are a lot of good reasons not to do that, and I think
we might get killed is a good reason. I mean, doesn't seem like a healthy thing to do.
Well, obviously, there's that. But would you just go up to somebody and randomly assault them or insult them? I wouldn't, because that's a nasty thing to do.
No, yeah, it would have to be what I want to do or not want to do. So, I don't know. It's not a. If I wanted to, it wouldn't be advisable, but it's not something I want to do.
I'm not going to do anything dangerous. Yeah, exactly.
But if I felt like there was a reason to it that overruled the negative, then I would feel obligated to.
Well, today I want to die.
I think these constraints on our language are inevitable. So I agree with Peterson. I think what he says is true. I just think that their SJWs are not unique in that.
From a survival point of view, yes. There are certain things that you don't want to say if you want to survive.
I mean, I'm not even talking about survival. I'm just talking about morality.
But they're unique in that they're wanting to legislate it, which is the problem that Peterson has. They want to.
No, but he specifically said kindness is the appeal SJWs make to control language, and they are trying to legislate it. But they also bring up hey, you're being a jerk.
Yeah,
right?
which is no problem. Go ahead, bring up that you're being a jerk. I don't care.
No, he just took issue with that. Peterson did.
Well, he's taking issue with that. They're saying kindness is the way that they're using to get that. That's their argument for getting legislation passed, which is the problem. If they just dropped it at kindness, Peterson would be like, okay, great.
But so conservatives make patriotic appeals to try and control your speech.
Yeah, they tried to make flag burning illegal, which it never.
I'm not even talking about laws here. I'm talking about just culture in general.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to do that at all times. And I don't think SJWs are unique like that. So to necessarily knock them on that, I don't think is fair.
Okay.
I will disassociate with people that I don't believe are speaking well. But so is that what you're talking about?
I mean,
the social consequences of things that you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the thing that's interesting for me here is that these guys are total hypocrites, because they're the ones that they want to get on. They have a podcast they say incendiary things about religious people all the time. They get out there and say, religious people are stupid, this and that. They make that's cool. It's okay for them to make fun of the disenfranchised groups that they want to go after, but Like if someone goes after these other groups in a different way, then all of a sudden it's like the end of the world. Like it doesn't. Like let the culture figure it out for itself. Like I don't have a problem with them doing their podcast and ripping on religious people. I don't have problems if other people are offended by transgender people and feel compelled to misgender them. Right? Is there not a hypocritical angle going on there?
Keep it out of government, and society will figure itself out.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Things on the very far left in America that I don't agree with, absolutely, and I think that it's very easily not to agree with people, but they're not writing legislation. Most of the time, those are people that are like, you shouldn't be able to say faggot, and it's like, well, I think you should be able to. I just think if you call someone that, like, it's probably not going to be great for you socially in that area, because most people are just, we're past that part where it's a pejorative that is like oh, that's gay. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up in the 90s. I remember that. No one really says that anymore.
I think middle schoolers still do, but they're middle schoolers.
Well, when I taught, no one really said shit like that, but maybe it changed. I don't know. Maybe coming back. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there is the SJWs that he's talking about, and then there's most people who are just like, I think social justice has been so fucking, like, just ruined by those on the left, and then like the lol cows, and then those on the right to constantly say that buzzword. Like, so people who want basically social equality, or at least striving for social equality, there's lots of really reasonable ones. Lindsay Ellis, for example, is often considered an SJW. I find her very reasonable. I find Harris, H. Bomber guy, extremely reasonable. There's plenty of these people that I consider, I'm fans of them, but also there's people that aren't for that, like Jeff Holiday or Logic, even Armored Skeptic, although he was wrong about this C16 bill. Sorry, Greg. But Logic already did that, so that's fine. You know, there are people on both sides that are great and really reasonable, and there's a good discussion to be had in the middle there. Jordan Peterson is not one of those people, and it irritates me when this buzzword is used instead of the actual topics, and that's why we stayed away from it.
Is Jordan Peterson a centrist?
It depends on how you define that word. I mean, he thinks both sides have their uses, so yeah, I would say so.
I think he's pretty much a centrist.
I don't think he has, like, if one side had their way, everything would be perfect. He's not a utopian.
No, not at all. Yeah, he says that the left is their role is fighting for the rights of oppressed people. The difference is just over who's oppressed and why.
We came in just with this Jordan Peterson stuff because you won't hear us talk about it other than this.
So, you know, if we're bandying back and forth our differences in values, I would say that the highest possible value is truth, and that one of the concomitants is that we need stringent protection for freedom of speech so that we can utter the truths that we see fit.
Again, he's already said he's in favor of restricting speech for things like Holocaust denial, stuff like that, inciting actual violence. So
yeah, we said that was incorrect. Correct?
Yeah, it's incorrect. It's just
already.
It's just false. I mean,
agreed. There is a line.
They should have looked something up.
There is no point at which.
Sorry. It seems to be they're kind of speaking off the fly with a little bit of, like, I don't want to say a little because that demeans them. They prepped for this and then they're talking about it together. There's no script here, so
yeah,
they could just be wrong. And if presented, they should just change their opinion.
They're basing their whole views off an H. Bomber video and the New York Times article. I guess they do have the book, but that book is like pretty. I mean, it's.
If you listen to it on 1.5 on Audible, you'll get through it in about 10 hours.
Yeah, but it's heavy. It's heavy.
He is saying free speech for every situation ever. At this point, we're just arguing where the line is.
It's
and
Jordan Peterson's free speech, personally.
Again, and let me remind you, this law has nothing to do with forcing you to do anything. No. This is a giant child saying, I don't want to change the way I do things because I'm the most important person in the room all the time.
A very well-spoken child.
Honestly.
So he tries to dial it back. That's like the best clip right there. Him just so not true.
Word salad is not fucking well-spoken.
No, but he knows big words.
Vocabulary words.
He told me to clean my room, bucko.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
And I think that that's a value that's much higher than kindness, for example. There's lots of situations in life where kindness in the immediate present is not the appropriate way to react at all.
Okay, I tend to agree, but like...
I don't see how that applies to calling someone by a pronoun they don't want. It doesn't. It's not like you're like, that person who's living their life openly as a woman despite them being born biologically male. Me calling them sir today, that'll set them straight. Is that the thought process?
Right, like, oh, they'd have a ding-ding. That's the truth, okay?
To keep cycling back to this, it has nothing to do with the video they're discussing.
They've already said that the Tumblr pronouns are stupid. So there's already a situation where they think that kindness isn't the first port of call.
Yeah.
Like, they themselves are essentially like mini versions of Jordan Peterson in the sense that there are pronouns they don't want to use.
And they would know if someone was, I mean, they'd be the first to, well, I guess I don't know them that well. I know there are many anti-theists who are like, just would bristle at the idea of, you know, tipping their head in prayer, even if it was like at a funeral or something like that, or you know, being forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance in class, or there's all kinds of things. I don't know if they're those people though.
I've got a non sequitur. What's what's the story behind Ausyarr and Friended? Your avatars are similar with the blue head, the blue foreheads.
Ausyarr stole my avatar like a total internet thief.
You yielded him the ground. You switched yours. Face reveal.
I let him do it, man. It was awesome. I love every once in a while people will be like, "You stole your avatar from Ausyarr." I feel like, yeah, okay, good one.
Always wanted to know.
And I do nothing to help fight that.
I sent him the high resolution one. I'm like, geez, if you're gonna rip it off, at least do it right here. Imitation is great flattery. I encourage it. Pragmatic Culture for $5 says, word salad is an atheist catch-all for, it's a concept that's big and complex and I don't understand it, so I'll call it meaningless. Word to the wise. That's totally true.
I ran.
Okay, so wait, hold on. Sorry, go on.
I ran into this problem when trying to read Hegel, because I was reading and I was like, I don't understand this, and so I had to come to the terms of like, am I just too stupid or is it nonsense? And it's kind of like you have to assume it's nonsense because you can't just accept it as true if you don't understand it, because that's not honest.
What about Deepak Chopra?
I've never read Deepak
Chopra on
Chopra.
purpose sometimes.
I mean, he talk about word salad. Maybe he's just above my level, but I think he's just engaged in hand waving.
I think it's
people can obfuscate on purpose too. I don't think that's what Peterson is doing, but a lot of times when I see word salad thrown around, or even in industries where somebody who's been in a job has been there so long and they need to make it what they do seems so hard to understand that then they're irreplaceable, and so there's always obfuscation that goes on.
He's talking about something that's very technical though. I mean, and he's like, when he uses the word metaphysical substrate, that's a word that really I don't know that he's appropriating that word from anywhere else. Like, I think it's just his word. Like, you have to know what that means. You have to know what he's talking about. And if you go back and listen, the first time I listened to the first time I listened to the first Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson podcast, I really understood what Sam Harris was saying, and I didn't really understand what Jordan Peterson was saying. And I think it made me side with Sam Harris. But now that I really do understand what Jordan Peterson is saying, what Jordan Peterson is saying makes sense to me. But I can understand, like, obviously they don't like Jordan Peterson to the point where they're not going to use the principle of charity. Like, if you go into it and think to yourself, are you there? If you go into this and you think to yourself, you know, there is some meaning here, let me work to find it, I think that meaning is eminently findable. And I other people are talking about it. Like, he did a talk with Brett Weinstein. I don't know if you guys saw it, where they talk about the truth. Brett Weinstein's position is eminently more understandable, where he talks about metaphorical truth versus actual truth. And they get in this little debate about he's saying scientific truth is the ultimate truth because it explains all the other truths. And Jordan Peterson comes back at him with the pragmatic argument that it's hard to deny. And it becomes such an abstract level that it's just difficult for me to call it word salad. It's difficult to me to say that it's completely meaningless. But if you don't understand it, like if you've never spoken French before and you see two people speaking French, it would be very easy to say, wow, that's just gibberish. Those people are retarded. They don't know what they're talking. But no, they're just speaking a language that you don't understand.
I don't know. Isn't something I like about Sam Harris is that he breaks down complicated topics simply so that, you know, people who aren't as smart as him, like me, can understand them.
Right.
Generally speaking, making things more complicated is a sign of an idiot, right? And I'm not saying Jordan Peterson is an idiot. Maybe the stuff he's talking about really is that complicated, but I don't know. I guess the question is there a simpler way to talk about what he's trying to address?
I read this book, The Evolution of God, and from a political point of view, what he's doing is much more intelligent than what someone, like, saying things that can mean multiple things to multiple people is definitely how you amass political power, which, if that's his goal, he's doing a swimmingly good job of it. So
if people want to understand the Maps of Meaning book, though, without reading it, it's probably just better to watch the lecture series, because he's way more understandable in that. And there's like 3 versions of it, like one from 95 and one from 2016 and one from 2017.
I've watched part of it, so yeah. There is so much overlap in the science about how we are just narrative animals. Like, we take to narrative. So I think just from a rationalist perspective, it seems like he's right about that stuff. He's definitely right about that stuff. It's not word salad.
Important in that situation. I'm trying to find.
It's not even about. I don't even think it's true. It's arguing about the semantics of what you mean by truth. The truth is that that person might have the genitalia of a biological male, but we're not talking about their biological sex. We're clearly talking about how they choose to live their life, and gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia in general are known and studied things in the psychological community. This is not new, and the way that they treat that is by allowing people who are transgender, who have gender dysphoria, to live their life as the gender that they see themselves as. There's nothing wrong with that, and it doesn't hurt you, so in what universe do you think going against that and going against what the entire psychological community has been saying for quite a while about these things? Look at the DSM-5. I'm just saying, at what point do you have to look at yourself and say, no, I'm just going to be an asshole today because I can't be fucked to change my mind about something? Get over yourself.
So, for example, when you discipline children, you often hurt their feelings in the short term so that they can learn to behave properly in the medium to long term so that their lives go well. People on the social justice warrior side of the equation are motivated only by kindness when they're also clearly motivated by power is something I find completely untenable.
Is it so difficult to remember a pronoun? You remember somebody's first name, you remember their telephone number.
I don't remember people's first names very easily, and I don't remember their telephone numbers very easily. And when I see a stranger, I call them by the pronoun that seems to be in accordance with their presented appearance.
So, do you understand how, like, where a period should be, he puts a comma instead? Like, are you seeing that yet? If you're uninitiated in the Jordan Peterson, this is a really, really good introductory course, which is why we chose this video. He says so much without really saying anything. Basically, that came down to one sentence. I don't want to spend the energy to be polite. Period.
See,
he also thinks transgender.
That's a great interpretation of that statement.
It's at some point it veers into dismiss out of hand territory because you feel them getting flustered and the guy on the right just calls him an asshole and then they continue. It's difficult to muster something else to say about it.
Yeah, they're very much in the territory you're wrong because you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah. They're not presenting any kind of real tangible argument. The whole you're an asshole if you don't conform is not a great argument.
I've already forgotten their names and their phone numbers, so
Gender people are apparently children, or at least metaphorically.
Right, like we have to treat them how to behave.
They're adult people, assuming they are adults.
Right. There's whole separate debates you can have about transgenderism and when's the right time to, physically alter a person, maybe go on hormones, whatever. That's all separate. This is just about pronouns. I'm just gonna call you your pronoun. I just don't care. I care.
I can't hear it anymore.
You really can't. You really can't separate the two issues. Can you not hear the video anymore?
I didn't.
You can't separate the two issues. You can't separate the issue of transgenderism, the age thing, and the pronoun thing, because the kids nowadays are using these pronouns as an introductory into testing the waters if people will accept them as transgender. Which is one of the reasons why I'm so deadly against this stuff.
So much more about not having an argument with you.
Yeah, something happened with the audio sound.
About
yeah, I still can't hear it.
You guys lost audio? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
What I'm
you were distorting
with.
a second ago with your audio.
I was
vocal. Friended.
Oh.
Testing.
Sounds good now.
Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear the audio. Stick a limiter on the signal. Okay, I'll do that. Whoa, where's that button?
We got a music guy in the chat.
Let's try now.
The mindset to cause an argument. If someone came to me and was like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And they're like,
Still nothing on the video.
Why we chose this video? I'm just gonna call you your pronoun.
Still nothing?
Yeah, nothing.
I wonder what happened.
It looked like it was going double speed for a second.
Everything looks good on my end.
But it's out.
Test.
I just don't care. I care.
Nope.
Yeah.
So much more about not having an argument with you.
Still nothing?
No, nothing on the video for me. They keep the chat keeps saying there's some sync issue. Maybe that's causing.
Well, maybe we're going to be forced to cut this short. Unfortunately. Well, I don't know what to do.
Try resharing your screen or video again.
It still says that I'm sharing, so I don't know how to. Oh.
Yeah, see if you can unshare it.
Okay, there you go.
And then try and share again.
Than I do about what I'm comfortable with.
I don't even understand the mind.
Working.
It's working? Okay, good. We figured it out.
Set to cause an argument. If someone came to me and was like, I was like, hey, how you doing, man? And they're like, oh, I go by she. I'd be like, oh, okay.
Right. The only time I understand when someone like Jordan Peterson is like gets mad is when like, oh, hey, how you doing, man? They go, I'm a woman. Like, okay,
right.
Well,
that's Jordan Peterson on the other side.
Right. That's literally just the opposite of the same coin. So yeah, calm down. We're all just people trying to do our best, and I promise you, most people want to be polite, and this guy is changing. Sadly, a lot of young men's, specifically men, a lot of young men's minds on how to act, and it's shitty.
Yeah.
That's you being lazy.
Isn't it impolite to
That's you
force
being
people to
lazy.
say
I
words
think there's
that they would not naturally? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Isn't it impolite to force people to say words that they would not naturally? And the whole point of a pronoun is that it represents. I don't need to memorize a name and a custom word for somebody. The point is that you have a name, and a pronoun stands for your name. I don't have to memorize 2 fields.
Yeah, it's a visual representation of the person. It's completely ridiculous what they're asking. I mean, this woman here, she reads as a woman to me. I would be confused. God, do you remember when Saturday Night Live used to do the Pat skit?
Oh, yeah.
That thing is so, like... I don't know that Saturday Night Live could do that skit anymore. Like, it's just...
No, that would not be allowed.
Oh
or
my
it'd be seen as
God.
like, it'd be seen as super like woke.
Just
Oh,
another
man.
character. They never address it.
Yeah.
They should bring back Pat. She's the Pat right there.
a very high value that we should also be aiming for in addition to truth. I think that we should be aiming for pluralism, recognizing more than one set of fundamental principles, fostering independent cultural traditions of minorities, and being willing to share power with people who are different than you.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think Jordan Peterson disagrees with any of that stuff. Man Faces World for $5 says, purpose of forced gender pronoun speech is to normalize postmodernist ideology into mainstream society, especially among kids. Yeah, the kids thing is what just bugs me. I was rereading the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, and man, some of the stuff they talk about, the whole book is about compliance tactics. Just the whole infrastructure that's developing around this transgender thing just scares me to death when you think of how people are just swayed by social pressure. This whole video is them trying to do social pressure on people. I mean,
I figured out how to fix the sound.
Your sound?
No, everyone's sound. If only one person talks at once, it gets worse. Till someone talks, it fixes it.
When I talk, though, it doesn't fix it. I hear it like blasting in my ears the whole time I'm talking.
No. When you talk, I fixed it by blowing into the mic.
Oh, really? Oh, well, keep blowing, man. Blow me.
So we have to.
Hey, Adam, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in the studio all day today, and my hosts were nice enough to let me step away and do the chat, but I think I'm going to check back in with them. I'm in their house right now, and
okay, are you taking off?
So
you're free to go, man.
Yeah, 10:30 out on the East Coast, so gonna go check in with my hosts.
Thanks for coming on, man. Take care.
Take care, man.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you guys.
Take care.
Okay, but we just talked about that. Like, of course, you would immediately assume, most likely, based on someone's outward expression, what their pronoun is. Yeah, that's okay. It's okay to get it wrong. I just don't understand why you would protest after someone said, "Oh no, they is fine for me." Okay. Well, like, where's the argument there? It's genuinely, it's either lazy or mean. It can't be neither. It could probably be both. It can't be neither.
I lost the thread.
Who fell down? Who fell down the stairs? That's what I'm wondering. Are you drunk, Steve? You're drunk. You're drunk.
I have not been drunk in 12 hours, please.
I remember that one.
There was multiple streams.
I was playing. What was it? I was playing the new. What was it? BioShock Infinity at the time.
So the thread is Jordan Peterson asked to be dumb or evil. We've heard this one before.
Okay.
Neither.
My refusal to use pronouns because left-wing activists want me to use them has nothing to do with whether or not trans people are having difficulties in society.
It directly contributes to that.
You are one of the problem in society that they are dealing with.
Like what? And promoting it in your book means you are actively that thing you said you just were not. Jordan Peterson. He sounds...
This is the thing that bothers. They seem incapable of comprehending how gendered our society is. It did make it go away, Ausyarr. That was great.
Magic.
They like how the idea that we can have a gender neutral society just it's crazy to me. It's completely crazy to me. Do you guys know the science, the gender science? Do you guys know like how crazy gender neutral child rearing is? It's bad for kids.
I remember hearing about it like 5 years ago in Sweden. Like one family was doing it, and I thought it was ridiculous and that it would never catch on. But it turns out I was wrong. I mean, like, how prevalent would you say it is?
Gender neutral child rearing is happening in every single like lefty household, and it's crazy. It's completely crazy.
Have they gotten rid of gender assignments at birth? Because I haven't heard of that.
There's some place in
like birth
Canada
certificate stuff.
Yeah, there's some place in Canada that has like a non-binary designation on a birth certificate, which is just it's maddening because so now all of society must bend to this completely tight this transgender, well, it's not really a transgender, it's more a gender neutral thing because the transgender people want to transition from one gender to another. Most transgender people believe there's only two genders. Like they have gender dysphoria, but this whole non-binary thing is just, it's chaos. It's complete chaos. Cult of the Lich says...
It's addressed towards me.
Go ahead. You read it then.
3 F words and an N word. It should be an N word, sorry. Drunk and falling off a chair. Tisk tisk disavow. Well, that's up to you.
So I don't think these guys have any decent argument, which is why they were savaged in the comments.
Sounds like a man who desperately tries to follow the A to B of the logical things, but like he ignores it when it makes him creeped out or like, ooh, that could be wrong. I can't sell a book on that. Like,
and they keep saying that he's only in it for the money. They keep acting like his motives are just purely financial.
It's a common argument from, I want to say, people of their side or their persuasion.
Yeah.
And it's almost like those memes where you see people they took a bunch of news broadcasts and put them side by side and the words are the same. So it's like, I don't know, seems to be an argument that's passed around.
You are that. I've had many letters of support from trans people, and they tell me that the trans activists don't support them, and most trans people actually wanted to be referred to as he or she. They weren't my friends. Just because you know a few people, just because you've talked to a few trans people, you don't know the trans community like the trans community does.
Okay, he does this a lot. In fact, could you? We're gonna get into this next time fully, but there's a little bit in the overture introduction of his book, right at the beginning, where he just brags about like views on Quora. He does this kind of shit all the time. He'll take again, it's a conservative thing. It's a religious thing usually, and
They
I
keep
believe Jordan Peterson is religious. I don't know if it's in the classical
They keep calling him a conservative too.
sense, but you'll get it over time.
Yeah. Is he? I don't know his politics very well.
Nah,
Well, he thinks conservatism is valid.
He thinks liberalism is valid.
Yeah,
he's a
that's
centrist.
the problem.
The problem is that he just thinks it's valid. I got what you're saying.
Yeah.
We're all supposed to think. We all know conservative is a mental disorder, right? Transgenderism,
Well,
that's completely normal.
It's related to the MAGA hats too now. So it's like if you're a conservative, you're also Trumpian, which is not true. But
yeah, the conservatives are the mental disorder.
Jordan Peterson would need to like either disavow the theism or disavow the conservatism and see which one gets them more upset.
Jordan Peterson needs to bend a knee to Hugo and Jake.
Because then we could determine what they're most worried about, the theism or the conservatism.
They think that that they've already said Jordan Peterson's a huge problem for transgender people. So this world isn't big enough for transgender people and Jordan Peterson, evidently.
Where they often try to use anecdotes as evidence and use for street cred, he will do this constantly. Yeah. So I don't know why he thinks this is a good tactic. It's not one that works on me as a person that deals with that with Christian apologists all the time. It's not good. He did a debate with Matt Dillahunty, friend of the show. Love you, Matt. I mean,
you just bragged. You just did
that Matt. I know that was the joke.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, where Matt did a very, very good job at addressing parts of this.
Yeah.
And so just read the excerpt real quick. It's just.
Soon after, I answered another question. What are the most valuable things everyone should know? I wrote a list of rules or maxims, some dead serious, some tongue-in-cheek. Be grateful in spite of your suffering. Do not do things that you hate. Do not hide things in the fog, and so on. The Quora readers appeared pleased with this list. They commented on it and shared it. They said things as, I'm happy and definitely printing this list out, keeping it as a reference. Simply phenomenal. And you win Quora. You can just close the site now.
Jordan, buddy. Like if we based our own worth on positive comments, we would rule the fucking world.
Who wants to put that into context? Because they're completely leaving out the entire context of that.
Well, when I read the book, it just seemed like a nice introduction to where these rules came from.
Totally.
Not that because people on the site liked them, everyone should like them. Obviously, that's false.
But he was also said that Quora post was one of the most popular Quora posts on the site.
Uh-huh.
Which they're completely ignoring. Like they're making it sound like he just got some positive comments when that was like the Justin Bieber video of Quora.
Okay.
Like seriously.
To me, their argument was you can't. Is like consensus doesn't prove truth, which is a fallacy. I don't remember what it's called. Appeal to ad populum. Yeah. So
yeah, true.
I thought
but
that's what their argument was.
But he is saying that the interest level was high, and he was talking about it in the context of his book deal. Like a book you want a lot of interest in if it's going to be a profitable book.
Well, he got the book deal because a publisher read the list, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And asked him if he wanted to do a book on it, and he said, "I'll think about it," and then went back and changed some things up. And
you think a publisher would be more interested in doing a book if it was based on something that got 10 million views on YouTube, or something that got 60 views on YouTube?
10 million.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah. They're leaving that context out of the entire thing. Like the fact that it was massively popular says something. I know it doesn't say that, the world, there are scientific facts that popularity has nothing to do with. Book sales have everything to do with popularity. Everything. They're leaving.
I know in their next, the third video on Peterson, they make a big deal out of this because they think that his worldview is consensus equals truth. which is not true, but
Yeah,
that's what
not
they've
true at
read
all.
into the book. So that's probably why they're introing it so hard here.
You guys are fucking sycophants. I love you. But you're dirty, dirty sycophants.
I'm betting on the comments on this video, a lot of them won't be.
Well, now they fell into that trap, didn't they? Smarter than you. 4D chess.
The trans activists aren't proper representatives of the trans community because they haven't been elected by the trans community.
Nobody elected
they're
you
noisy.
either, Jordan.
You could say that about literally any group of activists in
Quora elected him.
any community. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X were not elected to be people who talked in favor of civil rights.
Neither was Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
I mean, it works both ways.
Book sales elected him. 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube elected him.
You could say consensus elected him.
Yeah, no, popularity is a thing. That's how we.
That's how democracies work.
Yeah, exactly. It's how Trump is the leader of the free world right now. This is called a popularity contest.
I just don't know how you can.
He's one of the least self-aware people I think I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, the irony. The irony.
And that's pretty shocking based on what we've seen on this show.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself. And so I'm not taking...
Do you guys think Jordan Peterson is self-aware? Because I view him as one of the most self-aware people that I've ever seen.
That would be my impression of him as well, but I can't know what the guy's thinking. So,
well, he's performatively, he definitely performs as self-aware.
But Professor Peterson, let me jump in there though, because we have seen an evolution of language.
Oh my God, the Asian's gonna talk. That's a joke. I was supposed to say Oriental.
Or not, there are words that have evolved. We don't use, for example, I'm Asian. I would bristle if someone called me Oriental.
It's a really, really good example, and I don't know why Jordan Peterson doesn't hear this or listen.
That's
ahead.
Actually a really bad example.
Totally.
Like I obviously don't say Oriental, but like one of them means East in Greek, and the other one means East in Latin, Asian and Oriental. And people will go, well, we call objects Oriental, but we don't call people Orientals. But we have like Persian rugs and Turkish kebabs, and we have Turkish people and Persian people.
Yeah.
Like that's of all the distinctions, that's one of the dumber ones.
And nobody's basing legislation on this. And it's not that difficult a thing. Like as soon as things are picked up organically in language, people use them because they're easy to remember because everybody's using them. Like I intended to make a joke there to call him Oriental, and I called him Asian because that's what everyone calls him. It's like just easier.
Because he still thinks the law is about forcing him to do something when it's not.
Or maybe he wants to order an Oriental wife off the internet.
Oh my God.
That sounds like a Jordan Peterson thing. He cleaned his room, he got his house in order, he stood up straight, and he goes...
They so don't know this guy.
Click!
I think it's a joke.
And he
but
bought
yeah,
himself...
It's I don't know why. I think they're trying to be entertaining as well. They're trying to present to their audience. So this is what their audience will like, is jokes at Peterson's expense because he's a Christian.
Yeah. He's kind of, I don't know that I would call him a Christian personally, but
a wife.
Based on the description of his bedroom from this
that's
article.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how he acts makes me think he's going to order a wife at some point.
Yeah, he's got a weird neckbeard room, and that's coming from me. Check this out.
I shaved mine.
Neckbeard as fuck. This dude's more of a neckbeard than me.
He does have a beard.
Sounds like Kermit, though.
I believe that this legislation is extraordinarily dangerous, and there's other elements of it too that we haven't even got to in our society yet, like the protection for gender expression. And as far as I can tell, gender expression is best summarized in a single word: fashion. No. Because it's the way that you present yourself in public with your clothing and your manner of dress. The legislation that we are bringing forth with Bill C-16, and that's already in place in places like Ontario, makes fashion criticism something akin to a hate crime.
That's not what it says.
Even if you're a Jordan Peterson fan, how can you listen to him say something like that and not cringe and say, "Oh, Jordan, no." So not at all the point. What a joke of an argument that is. Oh, because that people are... All it is saying is you are not allowed to discriminate against someone because they were born biologically male, but they decide that they want to present as female. That's all it's saying. And if you have a...
There's no blood test for gender dysphoria, though, so you really can't tell if someone is just messing with you. Man Faces World for $5 says, Matt Dillahunty, Michael, Eric Dyson, Hugo, and Jake. Strong correlation between fat aggression and regressive thought. I was thinking it too, but I didn't want to say it.
That was a good point.
I didn't want to say it. Yeah. But it seems perfectly logical to me.
problem with that, then I have a problem with you. You're an asshole.
Are these guys technically regressives? Do I finally get to use the word on someone?
I would say so.
I don't know if they qualify as regressives just yet. I would have to watch more.
They look like regressives in this. Oh my goodness.
Well, you can't.
I just want, in case they actually do watch, I doubt they'll watch this, but if you guys are watching this, there's room for you in the Peterson cult too. We're taking new members.
Hire someone because they look like a man and wear a dress. Look like what you consider to be a man and wear a dress. That is.
I'll share a little story here. I live in Los Angeles and I do like a weekly dinner with friends. At dinner this week, there was a non-binary person, which it was obvious. I couldn't really tell what was going on, but it was an attempt to be something just bizarre, like not man, not woman, like just like every masculine thing you could think of, every feminine thing you could think of. Like he had like kind of a slutty makeup thing going and like a big beard. It was weird.
Was it Steven Crowder by chance?
It looked a lot like Steven Crowder when he does his drag thing.
What were their pronouns?
I didn't get into him, but he was literally taking our order at the restaurant place, and I was just like,
okay, he was aware. Gotcha.
Yeah,
I thought he was one of your friends at dinner.
No, but all of us were just like in dead silence, like, okay, what do we do here?
Well, do you ever go down Sunset Boulevard?
Oh yeah, no, I've been down Sunset Boulevard.
So I'm assuming that's where you're going to go on your misgendering.
I'm not.
Later.
I never leave this room. Are you kidding me? I'm too lazy to misgender people. That's not going to happen. Sorry, guys.
That's really what this is. Sure, fashion. We've used that example because it's the easiest identifier, but that's not even it. You could like women wear pants nowadays. Women wear t-shirts and pants. If they have short hair, but you think maybe they have soft features and breasts, so they look like a woman. I mean, it's not fashion at that point. It's literally just their actual gender identity that you're mistaking, and that's okay. You'll be corrected, and then please use the thing. Like, oh, that's formerly Jane, now Shane, and wants to be known as he or him. Like, that's fun. What's wrong with that?
The thing is, too, it's funny because I said this on Twitter, too. There are things that when we started this show, there are things I've said on this show that I wouldn't say today because I've changed my worldview on certain things. It seems like people like Jordan Peterson and people who follow this line of thinking, they're incapable or unwilling, probably a combination of the two, of changing their worldview. And when they're confronted with something like someone saying, oh, no, can you please call me she? I'm actually transgender or whatever. Then it's like they're unable to say, okay, I was wrong, ergo I will change. Instead, they take it as like an attack on themselves. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's a weird egocentric worldview that I am incapable of viewing. It's just weird.
Every time someone says liberal snowflake and then they bitch about stuff
I don't know
what
to do with this because it's all beside the point. It's like we don't want compelled speech. I don't care if you think you need to grow up and learn to be more polite. It's maybe even Jordan Peterson isn't capable of changing his worldview. You can point it out, but it's almost unimportant to the argument.
Totally.
It's a weird argument too.
It's like the monk debate. Go ahead, Ausyarr.
It's a weird argument because you could go through your whole life being excessively liberal, right, and being like crazy on everything, right, and then getting to one decision going, I don't think that needs to change, and someone be like, oh, you just don't want to change.
Exactly. It's not an argument. Man Faces World, $2. We're reaching autistic levels of unawareness here. Yeah, I know. And it's so ironic too that they're calling Jordan Peterson unaware, unself-aware. I mean, I watched a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff, and Jordan Peterson last night did a live stream before his show in Phoenix with your favorite person, Steve, Dave Rubin.
Oh, great.
And Dave Rubin, oh God, you should watch it because it is funny. Like, it's a very real moment. Like, Dave Rubin's like, I don't understand. This is how I know how many subs Jordan Peterson has, because Dave Rubin is complaining about how Jordan Peterson has more subs than him. I thought this is one of the reasons why I love Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson is a YouTuber first. It's like the coolest thing in the world. Like, one of us made it. It's fun. It's awesome. It's totally awesome. But Dave Rubin is upset because he's only at like 600,000 or 8. I forget how many he said, but he's like, you're the big lobster, man. Like, what's going on?
I will say Dave Rubin's new stand-up stuff isn't that great.
He's
quite cringy.
He's horrible.
Surprised me.
I actually went to the Seattle talk.
Oh, really?
Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, and Dave Rubin starts out with like a 15-minute spot of comedy. It's like it wasn't that great in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel the same way every time I've heard Dave Rubin throw jokes. It's not good. He does this thing in the beginning of his interviews that just set things off on a terrible foot, because like, I think he had Brett Weinstein and his brother Eric on, and the guy's obviously like wearing a toupee or something, and he starts talking about his hair. I'm like, are you for real? Like, you're really going to do this? Like, like, you don't interview somebody. Like, obviously Opie over here is missing a tooth. Like, it's been mentioned, but imagine you're doing an interview with him, and like, that's the first thing you bring up. Like, hey, how come you don't go to the orthodontist? It's like,
someone in the chat said he identifies as a raspberry. I thought that was pretty funny. But look at Rubin's Twitter feed. Twitter is essentially just one-liners, right? And I've never laughed at his feed. It's all just
totally
sanctimonious drivel. But going back to what Ausyarr said about how he could be like a super woke progressive your entire life, and then on one slip up and they're writing articles in the Huffington Post about how you're a Nazi. I think this is something I said earlier. It's like the rules have changed so fast, and they're just erratic, and there's these self-appointed, and the people who change the rules are self-appointed. Like, nobody asked for them, but all of a sudden it's, there are 900 pronouns, and not using them makes you a terrible person. And this just came out of nowhere. No one decided this.
Totally.
It's just imposed from the outside. And I think that's what people take issue with. It's not so much that there are rules per se, it's that they change. The people who are enforcing them are self-appointed, and they're all over the place. They're unpredictable.
People on the right see the world as a spectrum from order to chaos, and people on the left see the same spectrum as a spectrum from oppression to freedom. So chaos to conservatives is freedom to liberals, and order to conservatives is oppression to liberals. So, and a lot of the fight that we have is just the distinction between those two things. This whole transgender thing just reeks of chaos. And I mean, I fall on the conservative side with this particular issue, because it's crazy to me. It's like a bridge too far. Like, ordering our lives around gender seems very practical to me. It just seems practical to me.
the hypocrisy just drips out of their face.
The projection is astounding.
It's crazy.
And because there's been so much noise about the identity component of this, we haven't even talked about gender expression. And the idea that referring to someone by the pronoun of their choice is going to radically improve their status in society or their mental health is a completely unproven assumption.
It won't have the opposite effect. I mean, it will make people feel more accepted in their own skin. They have, most likely, body dysmorphia. Like it's a condition. You are helping them cope by being polite to them and acting like they're a person with feelings. That's...
They don't all... The body dysmorphia, we don't know that they all have that. The whole argument is that we can't... There's no blood test. I've said that. There's no blood test for body dysmorphia. Like, we're taking
Also,
their word for it.
Just look on Twitter, just the Twitter for the phrase, "You do not need dysmorphia to be trans," and you will find out how many people out there who don't have dysmorphia and trans, and they want you to know their pronouns.
That's scary. That is scary. They all just want to be special. It's
like
your...
Jake and Hugo think it's just people with dysmorphia that are trans people, right? And it's like a tiny little population, right? But they're totally ignoring like the rest of the LGBT non-binary spectrum that are flipping out right now.
Totally.
That's so beneficial for society.
And you know what the thing is, too, what pisses me off? He is a professor of psychology. He should understand the psychological importance of validation and how damaging it can be to someone to feel invalidated, especially constantly on a day-to-day basis.
Which, by the way, isn't...
What is the psychology on validation? They should really read Coddling of the American
I'd have
Mind.
to ask Jordan Peterson. I don't know.
They should read Anti-Fragile. What the psychological advice they're giving is horrible.
The entire book is about validating
young men
that require it. He literally cries on streams constantly about young men not being treated correctly.
Let's say what they say is true. And again, I have not read this entire book, so I can't speak to it. That Jordan Peterson, so much of his career is about validating men. Well, that explains a lot of his appeal. I mean, men would rather be validated than told that they're these villains, which is what SJWs make them out to be, with phrases like toxic masculinity and white male privilege.
Their whole argument with the trans people was that they need to be validated. Like, they obviously seem to have I don't think people need to be validated. I don't necessarily think Jordan Peterson is validating men. I think Jordan Peterson... I think men have gotten an unfair shake as of recently, and I think the majority of that has to do with the whole idea of gender-neutral child rearing, which the people who have gender-neutral child rearing in mind tend to lean towards we need to raise the boys like the girls. So the boys are the ones that are getting screwed in that deal.
Well, education has a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
like you said, yeah, but I think technology has a lot to do with it too. Automation has made traditionally masculine jobs less common, obviously, but also they've made it so women can do them. Whereas, our more service-based, skills-oriented economy caters more towards women's skills.
Totally.
So, men are feeling more and more useless in our society.
Useless.
And making less money than women, which
totally.
It is what it is. I don't know if we can do anything about that, but I think that's definitely part of it.
Yeah. And that's completely rational. Like, Opie and Andy here should be talking about that.
Sometimes maybe they're not treated correctly, but it doesn't mean that they're the only ones that need to be for society to work. It's so bizarre how there's honestly, young white men are his protected class.
It's bizarre.
It's fucking weird. I agree.
If we were his protected class, he wouldn't be telling us to clean our rooms.
We were talking about...
He'd be telling our moms to clean our rooms for us.
Men's rights activists, and I cringed a little bit. Some men's rights things are real, for sure, and you talked about, suicide rates and the way we talked about that icky word, toxic, and, it's... sometimes that's correct. Men in a lot of jurisdictions, like especially with like child custody, men often get improperly placed in that. The way we deal with like oh fuck, I mean there's just so many things, like military service or the expectation that men should always lead in situations, or men should make more money than their female counterparts, or I'm not talking about wage gap. I'm literally talking about this pressure on me to have more money than my girlfriend. I mean, I don't feel that.
Oh, this is good.
Societally, that's like if a man doesn't make as much money, he's like somehow emasculated and something. Like these are actual things that I agree we should discuss. And like parts of this book probably, and parts of his fan base probably have real, genuine gripes, but the way they go about solving them is so anti what you should be doing.
They're exacerbating the problem.
Really, it is, and it's harmful.
Say it, boys. Give us advice. How should we be doing it?
Oh yeah. They were saying that he was a neckbeard.
Well, no, I mean Opie and Andy here need to tell us how we should be doing it. Like how men's rights activists should act.
They're complaining about toxic masculinity, right? And yet earlier on they were saying that he's a neckbeard, the basement dweller, all these things that men shouldn't be.
They were being toxically masculine, weren't they?
That's right.
The soy boy version, but still. I'm gonna give him points for trying though. Good job.
Yeah.
We need to shame him into like shaving his neck. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
AJ Elix says this guy hates the fact he can't be lazy.
And it's I know.
Legislation also requires that the university made clear their concordance with that assumption on my part by mentioning in the letter that asked me to silence myself that I'm required to act in accordance with the provisions of the Ontario Human Rights Act. And so the university knows full well that the legislation does precisely what I suggest it does.
He is conflating the university's policies, the new university policy as far as treating transgender students equally and allowing them to be treated and called by their preferred pronouns.
You mean with respect?
He's conflating that with C16. And yeah,
Isn't this a ContraPoints argument too? Isn't this the point that ContraPoints made in his last video? That Jordan Peterson is just making shit up, that he uses like secretly to get famous.
It seemed to be the first argument that came out was that he just doesn't get it. His interpretation is wrong, so there's nothing wrong here.
Right, but I've heard people say that he's not getting it on purpose. That like this is his way of becoming big and famous.
Well, I think you'd have to dislike the person to think that.
Yeah, me too.
University probably made a mistake
I
too.
don't see any evidence for that.
Yeah, he seems completely sincere. I don't see these guys crying on their stream over transgender people.
Wouldn't have said to him, this is because of this law, but the fact is, it's just the university's policy at this point, and as a professor, if he doesn't like that, he's free to leave the university, and at this point, I don't know if he's still there, I assume.
think he is.
But the thing is, that's not what the bill is about. Just because the school misinterpreted it doesn't mean that's what the bill is. He's using a literal, like, straw man that was presented to him, maybe by the school by misinterpreting it, and deciding that that's what the bill actually says, instead of saying, oh, the school made a mistake, we need to talk about this. It's not even like he's just saying we need to talk about this. He's just saying, no, fuck this bill because fuck you.
Do you know what it is? It's the school protecting themselves from liability in case there's a frivolous lawsuit or something like that. Or maybe an actual hate crime, but I doubt it. I doubt it would happen. But if the university itself adapts its policy codes to legislation, that happens all over the world, by the way, in places that have, like, good legal teams.
And the policy can overstretch what the law actually says.
And it often does, to protect themselves legally. I can't imagine that the University of Toronto in general is super worried about Jordan Peterson, the man, committing a hate crime. No. What they are concerned
if a
about
university is overstretching, if they're overstretching to protect themselves legally, right, isn't it fair to say that Jordan Peterson is also able to look at the law and overstretch it, right, to protect himself as well? Because if they're overstretching, then obviously the law can go beyond.
Yeah, that was my argument in the very beginning, that people are going to use a lot of overstretch. That's how the Lindsay Shepherd thing was. 2 instructors were like, "Hey, we don't like them. We don't like Lindsay Shepherd showing Jordan Peterson videos in class because we hate his guts, because he's more famous than us and more has higher status and better research, and we're nobodies." I put a video on YouTube and no one watched it.
Jordan Peterson is to all faculty. Is I'm sure part of it is probably altruistic because just colleges in general are pretty liberal, and I think that's fair to say. So I'm sure a lot of people in that board.
I like how he checks with his friend to make sure it's okay if he has this opinion.
Steve and his wife.
Are they friends or brothers? I forget.
Are they married?
They're clones of one another.
Okay. So would that be brother or friend?
I don't know. They were raised in a nest, and Jake pushed Hugo off.
I like the idea of the mandatory salads. I think compelled salads is a good idea.
Room or whatever, we're very much like, well, I think this is important to add to the policy.
Yeah,
It makes sense. It's 2018. It's current year.
I don't disagree either.
No, I don't either. Like it's.
Part of the takeaway that I have from this is also that, like, pretty much anyone can make fun of Christianity or religion these days. Like, that doesn't seem like a difficult thing to do if these guys are doing it.
No, it's
What do you mean?
What
do you mean
what are you
anybody
drinking over
can
there?
in this? What?
Well, isn't their vocation like making fun of religion? Isn't that their?
Yeah, I think their channel was originally called Bible Reloaded. Now it's Hugo and Jake. Do you mean anybody can in the sense that it's just a target-rich environment, or anybody can in the sense that it's culturally acceptable?
Culturally acceptable and not difficult to do.
So in both senses.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I get in some circles it is culturally unacceptable. Like, watch Fox News and they'll be like, and the slightest grievance Christians have, they're crying persecution.
Yeah. The War on Christmas
So-
comes out every year.
Exactly. So, I mean, definitely it's a popular thing on the internet. Or at least it used to be much more popular on YouTube to make fun of Christianity.
Yeah.
But honestly now, I don't know. With Jordan Peterson, he's got a lot of followers who either he's turned a lot of people, or or they're just more prevalent and more bold now. But you can't talk shit about religion like you used to.
Well, even Jordan Peterson disagrees with the fundamentalists because he doesn't think the Bible is literal.
Yeah,
So
totally.
He disagrees with the new atheists and the fundamentalists, and then people hear that and they're like, maybe there is something to the Bible and we don't have to read it literally.
I actually had an exchange with Matt Dillahunty on Twitter where because I'm going to do a debate with Reid Nicewonder and take the Jordan Peterson side of the debate, and I just tweeted out that Reid is going to take the Matt Dillahunty, Sam Harris side, which is the anti-theist side. The religion is bad for society. Religion is dangerous, and secular morality is a better way to go. And the argument that I have is very much like Matt Dillahunty constantly does these debates with Christians, and the Christians will never argue with him on the materialist, rationalist side. Like, they're not going to argue with him in the facts-based realm. But as soon as you bring an argument to them that's in the facts-based realm, which is the argument that I have, and I don't necessarily know that my argument is right, I know that it's coherent and it's evidence-based. And even Matt Dillahunty was like, well, that's an interesting argument. Like, I could tell that I got his attention, but that's the much more interesting debate. And it's like, I had another guy tweet at me that was like, well, are you going to bring a theist on? And I kept thinking, I'm like, why do we need a theist for this debate? Like, the last Matt Dillahunty debate, well, the last one he did was with Jordan Peterson. I watched one that was like from a couple of years ago. But he's debating this Christian, and this Christian doesn't even want to accept evolution. Like, how do you have a debate with that guy? Like, it doesn't seem constructive. Oh, I'm talking smack. Reid's in the chat now. We're gonna debate it out, Reid. I see what you're saying. I'm taking that wrench back.
Yeah,
that
I think
wrench
this
is gone.
I'll be interested in watching that stream because I think it is the fundamental debate on where society should go. It's like, do we need a religious substructure of some kind, or can we just say these are the things that lead to a good society and we will instantiate those somehow?
Well, my thinking is there are certain fundamental. Jordan Peterson calls them axioms. Jonathan Haidt calls them moral foundations. My thinking is there are certain ideas that are memes. Richard Dawkins calls them memes, right? So there are these certain memes that need to get into the culture and people need to agree upon. Jordan Peterson in the Monk debate called it a low resolution narrative. Like, whatever you want to call it, that needs to happen. The anti-theists don't really have an they're putting out Matt Dillahunty puts out secular humanism as the meme structure, the meme complex, whatever you want to call it. That's the content of the ethical system. But it's just like it's a leftist ethical system that's not going to appeal to conservatives. And part of the problem is people have to feel the compulsion to adopt it. People have to want to adopt it. Like religion, I can understand why people adopt religion. Like, it feels good. Like, it's a feel good thing. So it's an easy sell. So, but my thing is just we can study that. We can study that if we look at it objectively. So, but none of the people who are promoting like Matt Dillahunty is not talking about it in objective terms at all. He's talking about it in philosophical terms, but only because the Christians are dragging him in that direction.
It's like not. Someone said the word jigaboo on Twitter the other day. I know.
No.
Like, it's literally.
Oh my goodness. These guys are triggered by. It's so easy to trigger these guys.
Literally akin to like, hey, maybe don't say weird shit like that, you fucking racist. It's misgendering someone is kind of like that. Not, I don't think to the social weight. Yeah. That it is, although to a trans person it might feel that way. I don't think, but...
The fact is, this shit's happening whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and by the way...
Dude, that's so authoritarian. It's so authoritarian. This shit's happening whether you like it or not.
It's not a bad thing. I don't think including...
Oh, yeah. Whenever you're forced to do things against your will, it's never a bad thing.
People for who they are and express is in any way detrimental to society as a whole. I'm trying.
This guy, just watch his face, man. I just can imagine him in like that prison experiment where they're like they separate the people into groups and they're like, you guys are the guards and you guys are the prisoners. Like, imagine him as the guard.
I'm trying to think of a way. I'm desperately trying to be on play devil's advocate. Like, what's the argument against using proper pronoun usage with someone who is gender fluid or otherwise?
There isn't one.
Gender fluid doesn't exist. That's what the argument is.
And I'll explain.
And if you set precedent where speech can be coerced, then the next government that you disagree with will also have that ability to do it.
Totally.
So then you're not allowed to be transgender.
Trump outlaws being transgender, or Trump outlaws bad articles about him in the press. Like, come on.
That's the first thing he would do.
Totally.
Yeah.
Whether or not
he doesn't even know transgender people exist.
The extent that he cares about transgender people is whether or not they're saying nice things about him.
Totally.
So like, I think Caitlyn Jenner's a Trump supporter, so transgender people are probably good. But you never know when Mike Pence becomes president, then I think they got to be worried.
That's why he's using this and framing this as if the bill is about free speech, even though it has nothing to do with that, because he has
nothing to do with free speech, guys. Nothing to see here.
He knows he has no leg to stand on if he actually argues from the viewpoint he actually has, which I am assuming is, I don't like trans people, I don't want to use the proper pronouns. But he knows he can't just outright say that. Again, remember, in the book there was a quote where he's like, if people knew what I was actually teaching, I'd get in a lot of trouble.
Right.
He knows what he's doing.
He's dog whistling, guys. It's all... I can't believe I've fallen for this. Oh, man.
He was teaching maps of meaning at Harvard. during the time where this stuff was creeping. So of course there'd be hell to pay.
You're crazy. Yeah, you're crazy. Yeah, I just rewatched the Jonathan Haidt interview with him, and Jonathan Haidt was talking about how teaching Jungian psychology was a big taboo. Like when he's talking in the book about like he should be getting in trouble for teaching this stuff. That's what he's talking about. Like is
it because it's gendered?
No, it's because it's like it has a religious woo connotation to it that just the academic community is against anything that has any kind of religious connotation to it whatsoever.
And he's profiting off of it. He makes a lot of money on Patreon.
Yeah, like, isn't it like $8,000 a month? No, it's like $80,000 a month or something like that. It's absurd.
It's a lot of money.
Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, good for him.
That little ugh. He's like so disgusted by this. I love it when people go after Jordan Peterson's Patreon.
I want to go on record and saying that I am jealous of Jordan Peterson's
Oh,
Patreon.
me too. Are you? He is the top lobster. Are you kidding me? But dude, I just feel like there's something there. I've never read Deepak Chopra. Scott Adams has said Deepak Chopra is a great writer and that his writing makes you feel good, but that it really has zero content. No value, no material value to it. It's just like poetry. So
people who don't want to treat other people with basic human decency, and who are reactionary and like to get on free speech bandwagons without actually looking into the issues to see if it actually does have anything to do with it.
He read the bill on his channel. He spoke in the Canadian Parliament in front of the government. Like how are these guys not knowing that he does know like a little bit about this stuff?
With free speech, they sure do like him. By the way, I'm a free speech advocate.
Same.
If you're someone who supports this, you are hurting the message of free speech because this has nothing to do with free speech. Every time anyone brings up free speech now, people automatically connect it with like Nazis because so many assholes have gone to free speech when they don't have a leg to stand on with their actual argument because they know it's reprehensible socially. They just say, well, the thing I'm saying might be reprehensible, but I have the right to say it.
Sorry.
It's literally a government telling you that you can't use the wrong gender. You can't use words. It's by definition a free speech thing.
Yeah,
thing.
And a big part of the problem that Jordan Peterson has with it is that he doesn't think the transgender thing is good for people. He believes that there are trans trenders out there that are going to adopt this stuff. He called it fashion in the article. So I don't know how they don't realize how this doesn't have the ability to be abused written all over it. I mean, this can be abused more than the YouTube copyright system. It's just ripe for abuse.
You do. No one is arguing you don't.
Some people are.
Some people are.
But those are the people they latch on to.
But that's not the discussion.
To misrepresent the actual discussion, right.
That's not the discussion we're having in society as a whole, and you know that. Be honest.
It's not written precisely in Bill C-16. It's written in the Ontario Human Rights Code. And if you read the Ontario Human Rights Commission policies on such things, you'll see very rapidly utilization of preferred pronouns is part of the legislative package.
If you read the legislation, Jordan, you will find out that they're actually called correct pronouns. There's no preference about this.
Yeah.
Valid.
These free speech laws were actually never intended to be used as accountability shields.
I'm perfectly willing to be held accountable for my actions, and the university has already indicated the seriousness with which they view my actions. Free speech laws are there because we use free speech to identify problems in our society, generate solutions to the problems, and then reach a consensus.
The consensus in your country is that this should have been legislated, however.
Yep.
So freedom of speech is actually is protection for the mechanism by which our individuals and society properly orient themselves across time. It's the fundamental method by which our societies manage to maintain the stability that they do maintain.
If your free speech was under attack, Jordan Peterson, would you be on that news show would you have a fucking book? No. How do people not see he's using this to make money? And
right, because he would be in jail because his free speech.
We see that he's making money off this. I don't think he's using it. Go ahead.
So his free speech is not under attack because he's on TV.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with him being compelled to use gender pronouns.
Well, he's arguing that that speech shouldn't be compelled, even if he's incorrect on that's occurring, and they agree with him on that. But why does being on TV amount to not having your free speech challenged?
They're making the same exact argument that Michael Eric Dyson made.
Yeah.
Like, I can be racist to you because you're on top. Because you have so much white privilege, it allows me to be racist.
So someone's free speech could be someone's free speech could be challenged, and then it has a problem with that, makes a YouTube video, and then people get him on TV. That doesn't mean that his free speech isn't being challenged. It means they're asking him about his opinions on it.
Yeah, and that's why they want him on TV.
Like, there are literal people in the government who do press conferences, right, that aren't allowed to talk about certain things.
He was anti-free speech, like, you know what I'm saying? His free speech would be a crime, and he wouldn't be published by, I don't know, what is that, Penguin? It's a branch of Penguin, but nonetheless, it is published. And that's
Random House Canada.
Yeah, which is a subset of Penguin.
Oh yeah, Penguin Random House.
Yeah. You're not being curtailed, my friend. What is happening is you're teaching relatively harmful attitudes to young men about how to live their lives, about how to treat other people, and I know you said you felt like you were accountable, but you're not really accountable.
No, the book is almost a treatise on how
to shirk responsibility.
It's not even that. It's not that, because he talks about things like superficially, like stand up straight, clean your room. But he talks a lot about, and again, we'll talk about this. We're going to go chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
But he talks about how people in society, it's clearly targeted at men. He says people, he uses men and women, but it's pretty clear he's writing for an audience of men, even if he doesn't realize he's doing
so. He brings it up constantly.
It's almost like he targets these people who feel bad about themselves, and then he teaches them a system in which they can, instead of actually improving their lives, looking at themselves, self-reflecting and saying, is there something wrong with me? Am I maybe an asshole? Do I maybe need to be more social? Do I maybe need to... Instead, it creates...
scapegoats.
It creates scapegoats.
Maybe it's
and
you
also,
is a point that he makes in that book quite a few times.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's a point that he makes all the time.
If I were to synthesize his thesis down, it's if you need to change yourself if the society you're living in isn't allowing you to achieve your goals, or you need to change society. It's one or the other, and generally it's going to be you, because society's huge.
His concept, too, about viewing the world not as objects, but as tools to facilitate in your own motivation is pretty fascinating. Like, I keep wondering do I see things like that? Do I see objects as a means to achieve my goals, or do I see them as objects? And I kind of lean towards, no, I do see them that way. Like even Jonathan Ides talked about this, like every single stimulus has a certain affect with it. It's either a positive affect or a negative affect. And that completely goes with what he's saying about viewing things in the context of achieving your goals. It's fascinating stuff. These guys are reading it just to prove it wrong. And I think that really the reason why they want to prove it wrong is just because of the religious thing. Like, they came to this fight thinking, this guy is pro-religious. Our whole career is wrapped up in anti-religion. And this he's taking our lunch money. Like,
but it's another way. It's a way of trying to decipher what your unconscious is thinking as well.
Totally.
If you have this conscious idea of something you want to achieve, but it's not coming about. Maybe look at your actions and see if you unconsciously are not wanting that by acting a certain way.
And how is that not valuable?
That's a great idea. I do that now. It's like that's a good idea.
Yeah, totally. It's a great idea. I'm interested to see the series. Has anyone watched the T.J. Kirk debunking videos where he tried to debunk this book?
He's writing a book apparently. I've watched the first one.
Yeah, it's I watched the first 2 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Nietzschean. Like, he believes that rules are almost bad per se.
Right.
Like, I would suggest people go listen to it. It's interesting. I'm not doing it justice here, but he thinks that basically different institutions within society create rules to benefit themselves, and that you should be the person who creates your own rules.
Yeah, I listened.
Mm-hmm.
I started listening to it, and immediately he was talking just about anecdotes about his own childhood, and I thought, not really my cup of tea.
He TJ is a surprisingly good writer, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would have to go back to it to really give you my thoughts on it.
There was one point in the one that I listened to that I thought was good, is that maybe Jordan Peterson doesn't focus enough on the idea that maybe society is corrupt, because he focuses a lot on you need to change yourself to better your life, but maybe society at some point is corrupt. And his examples were Martin Luther and I think Gandhi, the stereotypical ones where these people they didn't have their rooms clean by any means, but they still changed society for the better.
Yeah, I think human nature is infinitely corruptible. And I think there is a certain amount of corruption. The conservatives believe in a just world a lot more than the liberals do. So they lean that way. But Jordan Peterson's constantly talking about how he's pessimistic.
It creates a system by which you can grade yourself on a curve and just feel good for doing things you should already be doing, like cleaning your room.
No, don't clean your room
It
ever.
creates a system in which you don't have to strive.
I still don't really, even though I listen to them like every day.
Yeah. That part, just ignore it. It's it's part of the marketing, guys. Don't clean your room.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah. Order the world randomly. That's what I say.
Something. You are great by just the fact that you are masculine and trying to...
If you can get someone by chance to clean your room for you, do that. That's the thing to do.
endeavor to increase your level in the social hierarchy, which he talks about a lot, and we'll talk about that bullshit.
Like the fact that like a lot of his and I know this for a fact because he says it. I'll have a talk and a bunch of people will stay after. They're owed relationships with women. Like they're owed not only that, but monogamy with women, but with marriage with women, with children with women. They're owed these things. Society.
They don't understand the argument there at all. They should really bring... I don't know why they don't have someone that understands the arguments talk to them.
And he brings up several reasons to do so. Recently, his main reason not to, to have men be single and to force monogamy is so that we're not violent. Because if my balls are full, I'm going to run a car into a crowd of people. You hear that, lady?
And again...
My balls are full! Empty them! Make me a sandwich! And she'll clean my room for me.
This is what's passing for comedy these days.
Well, it seems to come down to how much of human behavior is evolutionary based and how much is not. Because if we go for evolution, then the enforced monogamy thing makes total sense. But if humans have somehow transcended the evolutionary, if they've somehow transcended evolution, then enforced monogamy doesn't need to occur.
Monogamy is one of the memes in Christianity that I think Christianity advocates for, that I think is good for society. Monogamy and forgiveness, I think, are two of the major memes.
I think that forgiveness is probably the best, and it could we could definitely use a lot of forgiveness in our society. We have all these people fucking up in different ways, and then they apologize, and no one ever accepts the apology.
Totally. The forgiveness is also backed up by empirical research too. I don't know if you know about the contest with the prisoners' dilemmas, where they developed algorithms to compete with each other, and generous tit for tat was the one that always won, which is basically a program of forgiveness, which is pretty interesting. There's a great book called Beyond Revenge, which talks about the evolutionary transition from revenge, which is the intuition that most people have, to the forgiveness, the socially enforced forgiveness. Because I don't think people want to forgive. You're totally right, Steve. Like, nobody wants to forgive. Like, and right now, since Christianity's kind of fallen by the wayside, nobody goes to church every week and says, yeah, we should forgive each other. Like, nobody remembers to forgive.
Well, look at what happened in South Africa after apartheid. They did the Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
Oh, yeah.
And people just confessed their crimes, and then they were forgiven. And I think that, obviously, South Africa has enormous problems, but it could have been a lot worse. Could have been another Rwanda.
Yeah, totally.
And I think now that they're veering more towards revenge, we see that things are getting more violent.
Yeah. So there's plenty of there's plenty of empirical evidence to show that this meme is something that we want to inject into the culture. So then the question becomes, how do we inject that meme? And I just, first of all, I don't even know that secular humanism has an opinion on forgiveness as a meme. I don't know that secular humanism has an opinion on monogamy or chastity as a meme. So these are things to consider. Cult of the Lich says, I just realized this person is that kid that was spent 3 hours I just totally butchered that. I just realized this person is that kid that will spend 3 hours argument with his mom. He can't clean his room instead of the 20 to clean it.
Huh.
Is that, am I butchering that, or is that just?
No, he misspelled. So I just realized this person is that kid that will spend 3 hours arguing with his mom that he can't clean his room instead of the 20 it would take to clean it.
Oh, the 20 minutes. That's what he means.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, totally.
Have you guys seen this, like, social credit score in China?
Oh my God, they implemented it.
I mean, they're starting to with facial recognition software. What it is?
No way. Oh
yeah.
My God.
They're using facial recognition software to build this reputational network with their citizens. Like, this person's an asshole. He cuts people off in traffic. He jaywalks and so on and so forth. But it's like, it's kind of terrifying where we're going.
It
where
is terrifying.
What level do we kill people off?
Well, it's like everyone's going to know everything bad about you. And so it's like, and nobody's got a clean record by any means.
Because like we're gonna autopsy.
Yeah, we're gonna have to learn to forgive people eventually. Otherwise, we're gonna live in a terrible place.
There was legislation. I read the book. I can't remember the name of the book right now, but it doesn't matter. Like being able to Google people that have been publicly shamed is. Like, Google never forgets. There was some legislation that they were trying to pass that is the right to forget. Like certain things that like gain you instant infamy. Like, there should be a time limit to people being able to publicly shame you for those things.
Are you talking about so you've been publicly shamed?
Yeah. Who's that? Who's the author of that book? It's Ron Johnson, I think.
Ron Johnson, yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about Lindsay Stone, who she took a picture at a Veterans Memorial where it's like, be quiet and be respectful, and it's like her with her mouth agape with her middle fingers up, and the internet just tore apart. She was like another Justine Sacco. So conservatives went after her because they're like, you hate America, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But so she used this service and it worked at first, but now if you Google her, that the first thing to come up is the image. So it's like, does she really deserve to carry that around for the rest of her life? I don't think so.
Yeah, forgive her.
But right, exactly. But it's going to. Like, she's forever going to be associated with that. So you have to we have to forgive her. How long does she stay in internet jail for? There has to be some sort of release.
Hugo and Jake, how long before we forgive them? They're never getting forgiven. This is awful.
And again, this has to do with perpetuating very, very negative stereotypes about men, and this makes people who maybe do have, for whatever reason, maybe they do have a serious mental illness, maybe they just have not been socialized very well, but for some reason maybe they do feel violent and want to lash out at people because of their lack of
There are no negative stereotypes of men.
contact with the opposite sex for some reason. It normalizes the idea that that violence is natural. It makes it seem
like all men are violent inherently.
Right. And instead of seeking out help,
All men are violent inherently.
and maybe saying, hey, maybe like I have an anger issue or my relationship with women in general isn't very healthy and I need to seek help about that.
And don't get me wrong, testosterone can lead to aggression, and
Sure.
that's true. I mean, that's just scientifically factual. But that doesn't mean that like if I haven't like gotten my balls emptied by a lady recently, a monogamous relationship lady,
Yeah.
that I'm gonna go on a shooting spree. That's not why. It's a scapegoat to avoid the other discussions. Like, I don't know.
But if more men
gun
get to unload their balls, there will be less violence.
Yeah, it's
right.
yeah,
That's the
totally.
point.
Totally. We know you're not going to because you don't have any
Yeah.
balls, but there are people out there that will. Just look up the Night Stalker sometime and do some reading.
Control, psychological services, healthcare, poverty, education. It's literally all just like, oh, those feminists.
And he even and the things he brings up, people being left, young people, men and women, but of course his audience is mainly men. But
Sure.
all of us, I feel like a lot of us are feeling left behind by society right now.
True.
Our institutions are failing us in a lot of ways. But Jordan Peterson is pointing out these problems and not providing actual solutions. He's just saying, this is the way it is. Man up, be more of a man, try and one-up other men about being men and raise your status in the social hierarchy and you'll be fine.
Do you think a lot of this is them being upset about that lobster intro? You read the book, right, Rebel?
Yeah. So the lobster hierarchy, it's an attempt to justify hierarchy because it's biologically based.
But it's pretty brutal. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, it doesn't get more brutal than nature. Like society is, like one of the beautiful things about human society is we've tried to take the edge off the lobster hierarchy. The lobster hierarchy is particularly vicious. I mean,
I'm unsure about the lobster stuff myself.
What do you mean? You're unsure if it's true?
I'm curious because I respect Gary Edwards a lot, and he made a post where he isn't quite on board with the whole lobster thing either.
Well, even if he's just using it metaphorically, I'm just saying, like it's definitely hard for people on the left to stomach that kind of realism. I think. I mean, we're ultimately at the top of the lobster hierarchy, right? We grab them, put them in boiling water, and eat them.
I read this article in National Review by Kevin D. Williamson, and it's advice to incels join a church. And he talks about how the sexual revolution, it was a revolution in the real sense, in that it has winners and losers.
Yeah.
And that it necessarily privileges men who are wealthy, who are good looking, who have social
status,
who have social skills too.
Yeah.
And that necessarily means that men who don't have those skills are not getting laid. And how that causes sexual frustration. So, like, where was I going with this?
Do you agree joining the church is good advice? I think it is. I mean, it's the same church.
Yeah, his point was, like, you can find women there who are single, who are looking for other or who are looking for church-going partners. And that...
Yeah, monogamous relationships.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, like...
These are the same churches that Opie and Andy here want to tear down.
There is an interesting case to make for religion.
Yeah.
And I just don't necessarily buy it all myself, but I think there are some points that
Dude, it's not true. You got to get past that. It's not the opiate of the masses, it's the placebo of the masses.
So you're going to church tomorrow, right?
I am one of the winners in the. Are you kidding me? Like, I've always had social skills. Like,
I'm going to church tomorrow.
Do it, man. Oh, you are actually going to church. What are you talking about? You're a Christian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, see? Good man. I'm a cultural Christian all the way, so I believe in the memes of Christianity.
It has nothing to do with actually looking at our society, recognizing problems, and attempting to change them. It's him saying, let's go back to old ways and double down on things that already haven't worked. It's unhealthy. It's
Is Jordan Peterson talking about going back to ways that haven't worked? Seems like he's talking about going back to ways that have worked all along. This whole transgender thing is what is brand new. Nobody knows if it's working or not.
I think it'd be good. I think it's his recent question of when does the left go too far. I think that's what we need to focus. I think that's his focus.
Perhaps. The transgender thing, I think,
specifically,
like gender neutral world, I think is where the left has gone too far. Yeah,
I like equity, diversity, and inclusion. What's the third one that he suggested?
What do you consider equity?
Whoops. It's not equal opportunity. It's equal outcome. Yeah, I don't like equal outcome.
Okay, I thought you said you did like equal outcome.
No, I think that is when the left goes too far. Yeah, when they suggest that.
And I think he knows what he's doing. It's disgusting.
Well, Professor Peterson, we do want to thank you. We're sorry we're out of time here, but I want to thank both of you for joining us today. That is the University of Toronto professors Jordan Peterson and A.W. Pete.
So yeah, that's sort of an overview of how Jordan Peterson tends to handle himself in interviews and sort of...
Again, they left out the best part of that interview where the guy says, you just put the pronouns in your cell phone. Like, everyone has a cell phone. Like, it's just so incendiary because it's like there are people in the world that don't have cell phones. They're poor people. The people that you are supposed to be representing.
Situations in general. Jeez, I don't even know. The book itself isn't about transgender or the pronouns or anything. Yeah. It's more just generally about his philosophy of life and how he believes.
But I think this is a good window into kind of like, because this is like the moment that sparked Jordan Peterson and kind of like who he is today as far as like in the public eye and kind of what he touts and who like responds positively to him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're going to see a lot of this. We might do other interviews as well. Where we highlight some stuff, kind of to provide other context. But we're doing this whole thing. We're doing this whole book. So every episode is going to be one chapter.
Yeah.
I don't know how long those episodes will be, but they will be that.
Yeah. So next time we're going to start with what Peterson likes to call, can you see that? The overture. But fuck that, it's an introduction, you pompous cunt. Yeah. Don't fucking overture. It's a book.
So I looked it up, asshole. And those are synonyms, so it's not a problem. I mean...
I perceive these guys as, I don't understand that's a very conservative attitude that they have right there. They're saying that traditionally this is a introduction, and the fact that you're bucking tradition here is wrong.
Well, they probably see it as him acting higher and more intellectual and more intelligent than he is.
Right.
So you have to make fun of that.
So a classic trope in movies I've noticed is the drunken stepfather that beats his kid and says, "What, you trying to do better than me? You think you're gonna be a doctor?" Like, that's exactly what they're doing. They're saying, "Oh, he's trying to be highfalutin." Like, it just reeks of everything that they purport to be against. God, the hypocrisy in this is it's palpable.
He likes to use big words to make himself sound smart. It's pseudo-intellectual pap. He's just a piece of shit. Anyway, so...
Look at that. That look is so... I don't know if I can back it up. The look he makes is just priceless there. He's like, oh my God, did he really just say that? We're going like full ad hominem now? We're just calling him a piece of shit?
Feel good? A little cathartic?
I can use words too. Anyway, I think that's it. So
look, he's so uncomfortable.
Follow us on Twitter.
Do you not see that he's so uncomfortable? Dude,
I'm listening. I'm not really watching them.
There was marital strife after this. You know there was.
At Papa Bird Jake,
You can follow Hugo at Hugo Reloaded, where he's been talking about Jordan Peterson all week. You can also subscribe to the channel. Make sure you click the bell or whatever. I don't know anymore. Just try hard. Try hard to do it. But we really do appreciate your subscription. I'm sure you're going to want to be here for that. So if you're not, you should.
Yeah, and share this video so a lot of people can see this series and see why Jordan Peterson is kind of an idiot.
Right. And also, you can go to our Patreon, where we slowly chip away at surmounting Jordan Peterson. It won't ever happen. We're just, first of all, we don't suck your dicks nearly hard enough for that to work, or fillet your lady parts. But it helps the show a lot. Also, if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, those of you who don't clean your room.
So I guess we can kind of end it here.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get mad at me for not going the last second. So final thoughts? Rebel, you got final thoughts?
My biggest frustration is that I have a hard time following them. And so I can't, make their position seem tenable and interesting in my head.
Yeah.
So I just have to disagree and point out when they're wrong and not really learn anything.
Yeah, it's like a 60-minute hate boner from a mentally challenged kid. Steve?
Again, I'm not a big Peterson fan, and this isn't really even my wheelhouse, but this was a swing and a miss.
All right. Ausyarr, you want to say anything before I end the stream?
I don't know. I guess they just make arguments that don't make any sense, like that he's a professor, a psychiatrist, and somehow he's using big words to make himself sound smart. And that's what professors do.
Yeah.
These big words.
I mean, that's probably why he went to Harvard, because he was smart. Jesus. I threw a comment in their comment section. I mentioned something about, I think the comment was super snarky. It was obviously just intended to be incendiary, but I was like, a 160 IQ Harvard graduate psychologist who has read every important research paper and author written in the last 500 years, going up against 2 college dropouts. What could possibly go wrong? And people were trying to say that I was making an appeal to authority, like Jordan Peterson was some kind of God figure in my eyes. I'm like, no, he commands. Look, I said it right there. He's read every important research paper and author written in the last 500 years. He has a better command of the evidence than you have. And technically, I mean, you call yourself an atheist channel. You're the authority that we have all sworn to subscribe to as rationalist materialists is the evidence. As empiricists, right? Like, the evidence decides. Am I wrong there?
No, I agree with that.
I agree.
I think he is more. I think he understands literature better. It doesn't mean he's right, but I think it gives him more credibility than these 2 people.
Yeah.
Also, it's not an appeal to authority. It's just an insult.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, they were giving me a hard time. They were giving me a hard time in the comment section because I was using ad hominem. And I was like, this whole video is littered with ad hominem. I thought this was stylistically necessary. It's all entertainment anyway, so I'll end the stream there. Thank you so much, guys, for the super chats. Don't listen to Steve. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an evil drunken libertarian.
That should be your outro in every video.
No, what's the outro? Go ahead. Ask me something interesting so I can stop this. So I can stop the stream just so we can leave them hanging, Steve. We'll do it supervillain style.
Fuck.
I got you.
So
before we go, let's go ahead and tell him that secret. Tell him about that secret date that you had with the transgender Jordan Peterson.